start there and then stop on the map a little bit. And then you
I'll
can
follow
just
your lead.
zoom through.
I'll follow your lead.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, November 2nd, 2015 City Council Work Session. At this time, I will call the meeting to order, and we're going to get started right away with Greg and Joe, if you'll introduce yourselves with the Uptown Charrette, and you take it away.
You betcha. I'm Joe Vitek, H2O Safe, Attractive to Neighborhood Business Districts, and serve on the steering committee for the Charrette.
And I'm Greg Blow, and I'm trying to be retired.
How's that working for you?
It's not close.
Okay.
Back in the spring or early summer, the council entered into an agreement with MSH Architects in Sioux Falls to help us as a community produce a charrette, which I dare say I didn't know what that meant, and most everyone we've talked to doesn't either. But really, it's a meeting of people coming together with a common purpose, looking for answers and ways to accomplish something. And this charrette in particular is designed to address the revitalization of Uptown Watertown. And we say hats off to the council that you took that step, and the mayor's been very supportive. And we have a steering committee that has tried to put this together for the community. There are 10 of us, and Beth happens to be one of our co-chairmen. Nancy is our other co-chairman. Needless to say, in the beginning it was a little bit of chaos because we weren't exactly sure what direction this was going to take or should take. And it's really been a fun sort of organization. We began meeting every week, and as we got our arms around it, we started having more time in between meetings, and we think we have a very interesting day and a half coming, and we hope that we'll see many of you that Friday night and Saturday at our meeting. It'll be at the Goss, and it will begin at 5:30 on the 13th of November. I'm all right. And then we'll be there all day starting at 8:30 on Saturday, the 14th. We'll have brown bag lunch, and it'll be a self-contained day-long meeting. And Joe's going to explain our agenda in a minute, but I hope that you all received a card asking you to save the date, because we think it's really important, and those cards have gone out all throughout the community, and so far we have, I think, over 65.
Oh, we're at 90.
Oh,
as
boy.
of this morning, I don't know how many as of this evening.
90 responses. We think we have room for 200, and if there were 210, we'd have room for them too. We think it's really important, and it's really an all-inclusive thing. Everybody's invited. It's not just for Uptown businesses or Uptown residents. Everyone uses the Uptown in one way or another, and we think it's important that we have input from everyone that might be using it. One of the ways we're seeking input is with what I call a workbook, and for everyone that are SVPs, we provide you with this workbook. Either you can access it by internet, or the booklets are available at the Watertown Community Foundation. When we started, you can see there's a map of the highlighted area, which is the area we are going to address. And it's a little irregular, but we thought that made up the core of the Uptown. A few residences, but basically it is the core and the gateways to the Uptown. And so within that, in the workbook, we've identified 9 different locations. And we asked the people to take a little walking tour of the Uptown and go to these locations. And in the workbook, there's a place for your observations at each of the locations. And it says, what do you see? What is attractive? What could be added? What needs to be removed? And any other notes. And so then we ask them to bring that to the charrette, spend some time talking about what they've seen, and then these will be tabulated. The results will be tabulated when it's over. So we think it's going to be a helpful exercise, and it'll bring some focus. And we don't really, as you'll see from the agenda, we don't really have, our committee does not have an agenda. It's very open-ended. It's whatever comes from this is whatever it is. So we think that's the important part of this, is that we don't come with any preconceived ideas of what we want to do or what needs to be done. So Joey, would you like to show them the agenda a little bit?
You betcha, you betcha. I'm just thumbing through some of these photographs. Some of the areas are places that probably need a little tender love and care. And so we're very, very much open to what everybody sees and then what their suggestions and recommendations are. And so you just walk through, as Greg said, and make your notations accordingly. It's important that you bring the booklet with you. The expectation is that everybody will turn in their comments at the event, because we have to have a cutoff date, you know. And these booklets will be gathered that weekend and taken back, and then that information is going to be compiled. So we're going to start off with Mayor Steve Thorson with a welcome. And so we thought that was most appropriate. And that first evening, we're going to talk about the importance of the urban center, telling the story. And so we have some folks that are in town, some folks that are from out of town that are coming and talking and sharing some stories. We'll hear some stories about Sioux Falls. We'll hear some stories from our own folks as it relates to Watertown's historical downtown. We'll look at a video presentation, and then I'm going to leave you hanging and tell you that we're going to do a Theology 35. Now, if that doesn't get your attention up and wondering what that might be, and so
I've done one of those since college, haven't you?
that's right. So you'll just have to come.
We're still trying to figure out the word charrette, Joe.
There you
Slow
go.
down a little.
All right, so we figured we'd throw that one in there too. Theology 35. There you go. So we're going to have some questions and answers that evening, and so we're going to just kind of be basically piquing your interest that evening, and then of course our architects are going to facilitate this process. We're going to come back together, and as you see the event program, day 2, which is meat and potatoes, if you will, we're going to start off at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we're going to have some table exercises. We're going to have several breakout sessions. Talk about why, what's possible, what your dreams are, what you've always thought should, the way it should be. And so we want everybody's input. And then we're going to start, we're going to have a brown bag lunch. And Charlie's is working with us to make that very convenient for you. And we're going to have the planned, and then, of course, the implementation piece. And then we're doing something that we think is going to be quite exciting, is we have a discussion panel. And so we have some folks, Tracy Turback is coming up from Sioux Falls, and you guys know Tracy. And Shelley's going to be there with us. Dave Johnson's going to be there. So we've got a variety. We've got some business owners, how they've done things. We talk about things as far as the government, what government can do. And so we're going to actually try to pull together how we would make this happen. So it's not just your ideas, but what you think, although that's important, but how we would do this and how we would make this happen as a community for the city of Watertown. And so you get to be a city planner for a day. And so that's your hurrah. And then once we've done all of this and years gone by, we'll look back and you can say, I had a piece of that. I had some say-so in that, and I helped to make Watertown a better place. I helped to make a difference. And so that's what we encourage you to do. This is an opportunity for everybody to participate and have some say in the process.
Well, thanks, guys. Anybody got any questions for these two? They're put a lot of work into this already. It's absolutely amazing what, if if you could see the vision that they really have, I think you'd be really surprised.
That's what I'd like to say. I'd like to thank everybody that's been very involved in it. I was originally going to be involved in it, but I think I would have slowed you down. I don't think I have the energy that you guys have put into this process, and I really look very excited about seeing the outcome of it and possibly being part of it on the backside of it. So thank you very much.
You betcha, thank you. And some of our other committee members, Diane Stiles, Vice President, Lake Area Tech, she was a workhorse, and Pastor Sarah Nelson, pastor of First United Methodist Church, she worked on it. Kenny Buchholz, he was part of it. Who am I missing, guys?
Nancy
I'm
and
sorry, there she is, right there.
Nancy
there
and
she is.
Sarah.
Sarah, and Angie Reppy, she was a big part of it. So it's been a real good time. And Todd Case
Todd
from
Case,
First
yeah.
District, he's been there as well. And so everybody, brought their expertise, if you will, to the table. And so it's a real good committee.
You said pack it up at Community Foundation?
You betcha. You can, actually, there's some right here at City Hall that the mayor's administrative assistant has some. If you want to, you can go on Facebook and just download it from there. It's H2O20, Watertown Vitalization, and you can find it there. You can download it, PDF file, or you can drop by the Watertown Community Foundation. And I tell you, the weather, we couldn't ask for better weather, right? And so you could actually take that advantage and just walk around and do that walking tour. And
Yeah, one of the things I want to emphasize is that we really would like people to register before they get their books so we know who have them. And Diane, as soon as you register, Diane can also send you a link for that PDF so that you could download it at any time. So registering is key. So that's why some of you have cards that say, okay, you've saved the date, now save your seat. And I think there's a lot of people who are planning on coming and they've saved the date. What they don't realize is they need to register. So I really want to encourage people to register, even if it's just for Friday night only, Saturday only, whatever you need to do. So you can do that at the Watertown Community Foundation or through the Facebook page.
thank you.
Thanks, folks. Absolutely appreciate it. I think that's the quietest Nancy's ever been at a meeting. All right, number 3, discussion on the proposed loop rail tracks for Glacial Lakes. This is going to be interesting. This has been in the works for quite some time now, and Jim and Brad, I think they both have decided that it's time to bring this forward and let the council take a look at it during the working session. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys, if you'll introduce yourselves, just so the television can pick up your names, and we'll go from there. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you and good evening. My name is Jim Sire, CEO at Glacial Lakes Energy.
I'm Brad Schultz. I'm Director of Commodities and Risk Management at Glacial Lakes.
So if we can bring up our presentation here.
Are you a KC fan, Brad?
Yes, I am.
Today, or have you always
No,
been?
I've always
Well, you
been.
were from
Always had
there.
That's exactly right.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
Yeah, it was fun to watch them.
I was down there in '85 when they won. I actually went to one of the games then, and 30 years later, here we are again.
Yeah, very
Great,
nice.
yep,
How'd you
great
like to?
example.
How'd you like to win that pitcher in that? Was it the 9th inning?
Oh, yeah, that was tough. That was tough.
I had the best weekend for sports, you guys. We're waiting for Jim here, but the Packers got beat.
That wasn't the real Packer team? That wasn't the real
No,
Packer
the
team?
Packers didn't show up.
Did not
KC
show
won,
up.
The Minnesota Vikings won. It couldn't have been any better. It was what a weekend.
And I enjoyed that football game last night, by the way.
Okay, we'll let you guys get roaring here.
Tomorrow. Okay, so we're here to share with you a project that we have on as Mayor had indicated, we've been working on this for the better part of a year. Maybe give you a peek into what we see in the transportation and ethanol industry what it's going to take to continue the success that GLE has enjoyed the last couple of years, and where the future of both industries, transportation and ethanol, are headed. So the purpose of our visit is to present a concept to open new market opportunities for Glacier Lakes Energy's Watertown plant, to explain what's involved, to answer questions, and to request support from the council. A little history, background of Glacier Lakes Energy. We are an ethanol production cooperative, headquartered and founded here in Watertown. And most of you probably know that. There are 4,100 investors in eastern South Dakota. The majority are in the Watertown trade area. We own 100% of two large 100 million gallon plants, Watertown and Mina. Mina is, just for those you might not have been out that way recently, about 12 miles west of Aberdeen on Highway 12. We have minority investments in Redfield and in Granite Falls Energy as well. And after restoration of our financial health, we are now in a position to invest or expand. That would include any projects within the two plants, and we've done a fair amount of that more recently, or even an acquisition of another plant. You know, it's kind of a tight market out there, and anything that is coming up is more or less what we call a destination plant, which is out of the Corn Belt, and due to our conservative nature, we're a little bit more apt to be looking at things within opportunities within the Corn Belt. But I think the main point of that last bullet is I just want to emphasize that we see a very good opportunity for GLE to continue to grow. As opportunities come up, we're in a financial position to do so. So over the past 10 years, just to give you a peek of what's gone on here in Watertown, and this is a very, very high look at things. In 2002, operation of the 40 million gallon plant here in Watertown began. Then in 04-05, expansion to a 50 million gallon capacity was completed. And essentially that was internal investment. It involved adding another fermenter and some other capacity or debottlenecking. In 2007 was the major expansion to 100 million gallons per year. I think it's important to note that we had no increase in storage and a slight track expansion as a part of that expansion. In 14-15, we accomplished a significant improvement to our grain handling capabilities. In essence, up until then, from 02 to 14-15, we were still using the grain handling facilities for the 40 million gallon plant, even though we were our production was approaching 3 times that. In 15, then we're consistently hitting production capability of 120 million gallons per year, which is triple our original nameplate. Rail logistics and market access are absolutely critical to the success of Glacier Lakes Energy. You know, I kind of go back to a meeting or a tour that we had up in our Mina plant when I first got here, and we had hosted some of the area county commissioners, and one of the commissioners asked me, it was a great question, but just I don't think anybody had any idea, and maybe there are folks in this room too that do not have an idea of the scope and the volume of these operations. First of all, we are a 24/7, 365 operation. We do not shut down except for 2-3 day periods or one time during the summer where we get into vessels and we clean things and repair and do preventative maintenance. But essentially, and you can best see this in the winter, if there's steam coming out, we're running, and that occurs all day, every day. Everything moves by rail, and that might be a little bit of a new concept. And this was what the gentleman up in Mina had asked. He had asked if we sold most of the ethanol from the Mina facility in Aberdeen. Well, you know, maybe about a truckload a month. So everything moves by rail. 99.99% of our ethanol that we make moves by rail. On the distiller side, it's a little bit different. We do sell distiller grain, which is what's left of the kernel afterwards. We do sell that locally. And so there is about half of that goes out on rail. We dry it and put it on a rail car and send it out. Both plants are served by the BNSF. Watertown is what we call a single car shipper. Mina is a unit train shipper. And a typical day in Watertown, as far as rail cars goes, 17 rail cars are processed or loaded. 12 of those are loaded with ethanol, which makes about 84 a week. And a dried distiller grain, about 5 hopper cars or 35 a week. So you kind of get an idea of the role of transportation here, and when you go back to this slide and you say, well, okay, that's about, 120, 130 cars a week. I mean, that explains, the traffic that you see, especially going through town. Yes, Don?
Jim, would you clarify a little further single car versus unit train?
We're going to get to that. In fact, that's the genesis of our whole presentation here. So if we don't clarify that by the end, ask us again.
Okay, as Jim started talking about, the role of transportation really in any commodity business is huge, and the longer I spend in this kind of industry, the more I understand that's the case. The ethanol industry is a high volume, low margin game. That means the efficient producer, the efficient rail or truck carrier, and the efficient blender are the ones that have the advantage and get to do the business. Transportation efficiency is critical. The BN has been on the cutting edge of understanding that and working hard to develop programs that enhance efficiencies across their system. We got a very good and very supportive letter from John Miller, who is the group vice president of their ag group, and he actually addressed it to the mayor.
I did share that with the council. They've all got a letter. They got the letter in front
Great.
of them.
I'm going to pull a couple of excerpts out of there that I think really help make the case and help us drive into the single car versus unit discussion. The efficiencies of unit train operations can strengthen competitiveness. What does that mean specifically? It means significant freight savings, and it means shipment times are cut nearly in half. A single car of ethanol loaded in Watertown going out to, say, the Pacific Northwest normally will make a complete turn in 30 to 35 days. We're shipping units out of the Mina plant to Tacoma or to Mobile in 15 days or less. Further from John's letter, in today's competitive economy, market access is enhanced by unit train capability because many customer destinations increasingly call for this capacity, especially export markets. Okay, the Burlington Northern, which is one of the 2 dominant railroads in the western United States, and as Jim mentioned, serves both our plants and is very strong in the Dakotas and the rest of the upper Midwest. Go down to the Texas Gulf area, which is Houston, Galveston, Texas City. That's for both export and for domestic purposes. They're strong into the Dallas-Fort Worth market, and they go into the Los Angeles area, which we call Watson. Just in the last 12 to 18 months, they've added or revamped 3 more locations, with more coming. One is in Sauget, Illinois, which is East St. Louis, which serves the St. Louis market and is available for loading barges. Mobile, Alabama, and Tacoma, Washington. And we're proud to tell you that for each of those 3 destinations, Glacial Lakes and Mina was either the first or the second shipper into each of those destinations. Okay. When we talk about the domestic market is relatively capped. So what's important to these unit train receivers is capture those rate savings and the shipping efficiencies, and that's important to us as the shipper. And here's a critical point, and Don, I think this may be the heart of your matter. Unit destinations buy exclusively in units. They don't buy a mix mash of singles and units. The markets I went through on there on Fort Worth, Los Angeles, and the Houston area, big populous areas, take a lot of ethanol in there. it all goes in their unit trains. There's no single cars. When you look at those new destinations, Mobile, St. Louis, Tacoma, and more to come, they won't be taking single cars any longer either. So competitive markets for single car shippers are going to dry up over time. So that's going to basically ask the question, what is Glacier Lakes Watertown going to be able to do with its ethanol if it doesn't become a unit shipper? Okay, now, we talk about the domestic market, and you've probably all read, seen, or maybe, heard Jim or somebody else in our company talk about the blend wall. The United States has basically erected a blend wall, which is built on the foundation of E10, and lots of us had conversations about E10, E15, E30, E85. There's some potential growth there if we can do that, and it's very important. But real growth for ethanol production must be realized through the export markets. We had a gentleman named Marty Ryka, a very smart individual, speak to our annual meeting not long ago, and according to his business, which is called the Pro Exporter Network, potential for U.S. corn ethanol growth is nearly 60% if foreign motor gas just went to E5. They're currently operating at maybe about an E2 level. If they went to E5, that would increase our markets by 60%. And here's a graph that he put up on there, and it's pretty self-explanatory there. There's 13 billions of domestic demand, and we can argue that up a little bit or argue that down a little bit based off of how much we can do with E15, E30, and E85. But there's real potential for export shipments. And here's an interesting bar graph that starts in 2005. And in general, it's a nice upswing there. There's some ups and downs there. 2011, there was an aberration in some of the trade rules, but it's a growing market. But it also shows there what the capacity for exports are in the United States, and they're strong. You might ask yourself, okay, what countries take ethanol from us today? These countries are all have in the last few years taken export ethanol quality from our Mina, South Dakota operation. Brazil, China, Korea. In fact, we're shipping a train that's going to be destined for Korea in 10 days. India, the Philippines, and one of our folks, our ethanol marketing manager, just got back from a trip to the Philippines trying to help develop that. Peru, and the Middle East. Now, there's about 3 countries on there that really jump out to me as what in the heck is going on there? Brazil. Everybody reads about ethanol here in South Dakota. Why are we shipping to Brazil? Aren't they our main competitor? Yes, they are, but they're really only competitive in export markets half the year. The other half of the year, they may well be an importer. The United States in general, and the Mina plant specifically, has shipped lots of ethanol into Brazil. China, like so many other things for ethanol, is the sleeping giant. If we wake it up, you can really see these markets take off. We, in fact, have shipped to China, and that's kind of the wild card in the ethanol balance sheet going forward. And then probably the last one is the Middle East. You ask, why would we be shipping ethanol in the Middle East? That'd be like hauling coals to Newcastle. Well, maybe so, but ethanol is such a good quality product with such a high octane. It's known as an octane enhancer going over there. And if the price relationship between crude oil and ethanol is right, Middle Eastern countries will import ethanol in pretty good fashion.
So a good question is, how does Watertown stay competitive and relevant in this in some of the developments that are beginning to occur? And I might go take you back to the Brad's unit train locations. Those are just unit train locations for the BNSF. We have other railroads out there that have many, many more unit train facilities. So what's happening within the BNSF is always also happening within the CSX and the UP and some of the other railroads. They're developing these unit train locations. Well, how do we stay competitive and relevant? The project that we've been working on over the past year or so is to add a unit train capability for Watertown. This would consist of 4 loops capable of handling or holding 96 cars each. In addition to that, we would look for to construct additional finished storage of 4.5 million gallons and a loadout, which would be near the current Hanton farm. That's another area of our operation that was not touched as part of the expansion. We are still operating off of the original tank farm that was constructed for a 40 million gallon plant. And so it's amazing what our guys have done, the crews have done with what they have. And up until now, we've just more or less forced them to do what they can do and get by. And they've stepped up to that call nicely. As we see it, it's time to eliminate that risk, to mitigate that risk, to build more storage, and that part of the project would fit nicely with the loop track. Total cost of this project is estimated at right around $16 million. Here's what the Watertown Loop would look like. Again, take yourself back, and that one slide that Don asked about a single car shipper, a unit train shipper. We currently have the ability to see both sides of this when we're marketing for Watertown, marketing for Mina. So this track is designed somewhat similar to Mina. Actually, this is a more robust loop than what Mina has. But if you look down here, and I'm going to try my best to use this pointer, down here is where our main line is. This blue line comes in, and this is our rail yard, the beginning of our rail yard right here. So the plant is, and this map is directionally correct. It's north. The top of it's north. So our plant is down below that and to the east. Even though it really doesn't show, Highway 212 would be along this top edge right here. You can see this is Little River City. This is Napa. This is Hesco. The river comes right through here. And then this is Broadway. The bypass goes around here, and again, this blue line is going to be the current service. Anything in red is going to be new construction. And we can come back to this map later if we need to. Another big plus for Watertown from the letter that Brad referred to. This project can potentially aid in reducing overall grade crossing times over the course of a day because unit train service may result in fewer trains. Less overall train time at grade crossings can benefit commuters and other surface street traffic. How many of you have received complaints about railroad crossings in this city? I know I do. So let's talk about that a little bit. Improve safety and accessibility. Currently, again, we're a single car shipper. Single cars equals lower rail cars per service, and that equals more crossing events. And what I consider a crossing event is essentially 212. Some of the other secondary streets, again, let's remember we're shipping the same number of cars, but once there's a crossing event, the crossing events will be reduced, and once there's a hookup, and we're going to talk about this in the next slide, it's a one-time hook and go concept. So we currently get service 2 times per week. There's 8 crossing days per month with that level of service, but there's multiple crossings per service, and we've all seen this. We pull up to 212, we stop, the train almost clears 212, and then it starts to back up. And it can be very frustrating. That's the characteristics of a single car shipper. They're staging, and they're using that track to the southwest to stage, hook, unhook, move cars around, and we've all been there when we see that. And the other part that I don't know if you've noticed, this occurs mainly during the daylight hours. And some people claim that it's right during rush hour every time, or rush minute here in Watertown. So, as we see it, as a unit train shipper, the loops that we would construct on the map that you saw, and I have copies of maps if anybody is interested, there's 4 loops there. They're capable of holding an entire train, and a good question might be, well, why do you need 4 loops? Well, as we see it, and the way we're designed up in Mina, we need an empty loop for full ethanol waiting to be pulled, an empty loop for returning ethanol. We needed an empty or a loop for full distiller grain and an empty loop for returning distiller grain. Otherwise, we're going to create the same issues that we have right now with this staging process. And in fact, that's the only way the BNSF will let us design this. So the train arrives with no interruption and no back and forth staging. It just comes right in. It goes right into one of those loops, and it's out of the way. It's not bothering anybody. We don't know if they'll coordinate a departure with an arrival. They may, if we're ready. In some cases, if the train crew is out of hours, they may wait a day, go get a motel room. But basically, when they take off again, it's what we call a hook up and go. They hook up, they charge everything up, they get it ready, and then they depart. And there's no more of this back and forth. Since these are 96-car units, there would be one crossing per arrival and one crossing per departure, or roughly 5 to 6 crossings per month. Trains keep moving. When they're hooked to these units, they keep moving and they do not stop. Trains run at all hours of the day. These unit trains, if there's one destined to come in and it's about 11 o'clock at night, they are going to continue until they get here, and then they're going to stop when they're in that loop. Maintaining the status quo has a cost for us as well. The Mina plant has advantages over Watertown right now. Watertown is one of the few 100 million gallon plants without unit train capability. Watertown can make the export spec. We've done it out here, but we cannot ship it to the export terminals, which are on the Gulf. There's increased vulnerability in winter months. A couple of years ago, I think it was 2011, we had to slow the plant down, and in fact, we shipped by truck, I believe it was a couple of 100,000 gallons of ethanol to Mina so that we could keep this plant running in the winter. The last thing you want to do is shut down an ethanol plant in the winter. And most importantly, the current configuration will restrict growth of the Watertown operation. So we see this as a win-win-win. The city wins, the BNSF service to the city is elevated. The BNSF is not going to, they've indicated in their letter that they make unit train facilities a priority. There's going to be increased economic impact if Watertown can continue to, the Watertown plant and Glacier Lakes Energy can continue to compete and be relevant and be on the cutting edge. There's going to be some economic activity from construction. It's a $16 million project. And then I'm probably most unfamiliar with this one, but there will be, surely there will be a change in property tax assessment on the 120 acres that we've have options to purchase. Of course, what do we receive? We receive improved efficiency. We enhance our marketing opportunities. We gain access to export markets. We improve our ability to compete, and we eliminate the production interruption risks that we currently have. In our opinion, the general public wins enhanced safety and improved crossing accessibility. And just a while back, I sent the council a letter, and I just want to go back through this again, just to bring some of this out. Glacier Lakes Energy's economic impact, it's and we employ 120 between the two plants. Specifically to Watertown, we have 70 employees here. That average would be somewhat higher because the administration is here, and so. Watertown is the home base and enjoys the higher purchasing power of the administrative office. Between the two plants, we pay annual taxes of over $4 million. We reinvest. We keep up the plants as we need to, and all of this adds property value. But we're not your normal 70 employee business. So what's different about us? We're a cooperative, and the value that we add, the dollars that we add to this product, this corn kernel that's converted to ethanol and distiller grain, is returned to our shareholders. So I'm going to jump down to the second bullet. Since 2014, we've distributed $78.6 million to our shareholders. 55% of that is to the Watertown trade area, which I've defined as Cottington County and every county touching Cottington County. So if we're pulling in folks from Spink County to do business here, that number could very well be higher. This is money that is sent out, cash that is sent out and spent locally. That's where we're different. Our project timeline, fall of 2015, we would look to close on the land purchases and finalize project design. We would formulate a request to vacate the request to vacate Broadway process begins. Winter of 2015, approvals from FEMA, BNSF, and others. Finalize construction bids. We need to go to Pier and talk to the South Dakota Department of Transportation. Next spring, we would look to move dirt with a completion date of next fall. What's needed from the council? We would want you to know that we are working with concerned businesses. We've made contact with 3 of the businesses out there already, HESCO and Dakota Bodies and Little River City. We would look for the support of the mayor and city council, and we would want to begin the process to vacate Broadway, essentially between HESCO and the bypass. Are there any questions for us?
Could you go back to the map? They showed the circle.
Yes.
Very much a layperson question here. You said you're going to have 4 loops. So these 4 concentric circles is what we're talking about. They're just all lined up together and around, correct?
That's correct.
And this will be dedicated to GLE. Is there any opportunity to leverage that infrastructure for other businesses?
That's a very good question, Don. We've left that possibility open. We don't know exactly what the railroad would think about a crossing through this loop. I can tell you that this area down here is all switches, and whether it's feasible to put a crossing there, we certainly can't have. The trains will essentially, start over on this side and likely end somewhere here. That's roughly what it's going to take for the 96 cars. So if there was access, it would need to be likely be here, but I guess I'd leave that up to the engineers to tell us.
Well, and I recognize you can't put any additional access that hinders your ability. You don't want to do that. But my thought is that's a lot of infrastructure going on. If we can tap into that somehow, either side by side or just the future potential.
One of the things I'd like to mention, so the council knows, is that prior to the bypass road going in, there was around that 3,400 cars going up and down Broadway. And once the bypass went, what did I give you guys last time for a number? We had we did a test out there. We put them out.
And I thought it was
like
about 1,100 per weekday and about 600 on the weekend.
Yeah. So the numbers have gone down drastically, and I think the bypass has really done kind of what it was intended for.
How does that affect the street crossing issue we got with the closing of this one? If this does that not take away a crossing?
It does not make a difference, no.
Isn't there are current crossings on Broadway that don't count anymore?
Yeah, they flat out told us that by putting this in, it will not help the First Avenue.
Yeah, we tried that, Bill. If you look at the arrow here, we thought, well, maybe this could count as the one crossing, and we were politely told no.
This question isn't exactly on point, but I'll ask it anyway. I know you're trying to be proactive relative to the export market. Any comments about what's happening out in Washington? I know that the ethanol industry has not got the favor anymore that it had in years past. Any comments that you may want to make to that, you guys?
Well, we haven't given up the fight. In fact, you're going to see that fight mainly pick up here in Watertown. We feel that Watertown is a prime location to bring some things to the surface and in the form of higher blends. I could sit here all night and talk about this, Glenn, and I appreciate the question. We haven't given up the fight. And as I see it, as we see it, the most important thing we need to do at this point is insulate ourselves from, God forbid, the American consumer or government step away from ethanol. We got to take this product somewhere. And in fact, you could maybe argue that even makes our case a little bit more strong, because we got to have a way in Watertown here to get that ethanol out of this country.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we seem to be going one way on ethanol blends, and some of these other countries are going the other. We're passing each other. They're going higher, and and really what's at work there is the old food versus fuel argument. The oil industry is making some inroads, and for some strange reason, the big environmental organizations are siding with big oil on this.
Something that speaks to on the exports is just the absolute efficiency of the American farmer to be able to grow corn cheaply, and the American ethanol industry to be able to produce it cheaply. I mean, to be competitive in world markets all the way over to China, where they've got corn and they have ethanol plants, yet they prefer to bring our product in there, speaks volumes. So it's a perfect situation as far as free trade goes. Make it cheap and sell it.
And Brad's earlier comment that why would we ship ethanol to Brazil? We both know that these plants that we built in this country, the industry that was built in the last 7 or 8 years in this country, is much more efficient than any other ethanol in any other country. And there are lots of times when Brazil can't produce it as economically as we can here.
Jim, I truly believe all that. What I would like to do is I'd like to bring you guys back to Broadway.
Okay.
I'd like the council to really look more towards the Broadway. I know that your expectations for the ethanol industry is going to grow leaps and bounds, and we believe in that story with you. But what I'd like to do is get back to Broadway and kind of give us a handle on what's moving along on that. What do you need from us? What are you after? What are we going to do with the bridge? Things like that. I think we need to have that kind of a discussion.
Okay, so where we're at right now on the west side of Broadway, that's the Hanton property. We have an option to purchase, and we will go ahead with that purchase. We are on the east side of Broadway. That's the Andre property, and we have exercised our option to purchase that. We have a small sliver in the southwest corner of this project that's property owned by the city of Watertown, and we've got a purchase agreement in place for that. So we own the property on both sides of Broadway. We've positioned ourselves. This is really the only place this loop can be constructed economically, and essentially we'd have to go way south of town, and then we've got other issues, or north of town. So we're kind of back to what needs to be done. We've visited, as we mentioned, we visited with HESCO. They're very supportive of us. We are of them. We feel that I didn't know much about HESCO prior to this project, and they've got some good things going on. They're probably one of Watertown's best kept secrets. It's interesting just to listen to Brad over there and talk about his opportunities and things he sees coming his way. We have sat down with Little River City on several occasions. We would like to diversify them towards higher blends of ethanol. They do not have what we call the blender pumps or flex pumps right now. We'd like there are state monies available to replace their infrastructure. We'd like them to involve themselves in that process. I think for the most part it would be funded by the various state grants and programs through the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And then we've had a recent discussion with Dakota Bodies, and they are very supportive of us as well. They did acknowledge that some of their employees use Broadway to get snacks and go to lunch, but felt that over time that adjustment would be made, and it wouldn't be a major inconvenience for most of those folks. So we feel like we're positioned well for this this proposal or this request, and I guess the next steps would be to find out what's involved with the process, and we'll continue to work with folks that have a concern. I think at one point there was a discussion with, and I'd have to go back and look, but a discussion with Watertown Fire and Watertown Police Department. They really didn't have many concerns about that response time. So obviously we'd have to formalize all of that and make sure that.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Jim, because we've had that discussion with the fire and with the police, and there's just the length of time it takes to get onto the highway or the 20 overpass or bypass, whatever you want to call it. There's no issue there, not with our fire or police.
What would happen to Broadway as it crosses the river? Then does that just become a cul-de-sac, or does that become an entrance point for HESCO? What happens? And I know that bridge has been slated to get replaced. Now, I don't know how that changes or comes into play here if it no longer becomes a through street and only becomes an access point for HESCO. So I'd like to understand that just a little bit.
And Mike, I don't know if we have the full answer for that. I think we were told by the Department of Transportation to get everybody together in Watertown and make sure everybody's on the same page and then come see us. I think when we spoke with HESCO, they indicated they have about a dozen trucks that come across that bridge every day. And I would assume that's in 12 in, 12 out, so that's 24 trips. Plus, I've looked out there and they probably have 8 cars or so those are employees that are coming and going. The question is, and it's a good question, would that bridge still need the attention it needs if the loads were lightened, or would the design of the bridge change? And I don't have the answers to that. That's part of the discussion with the state.
Would that then be their decision in regards to either abandoning that as a?
If I may, I'm going to speak up to it, and I need to ask Shane a quick question, because on that I think they were very, very clear that they didn't think the bridge should be there or replaced for one business, and so I think there's that to work out between them and ourselves in Glacial Lakes. Shane, did that bridge did Clark Engineering or Austin Engineering, any of them take a study on that particular bridge? And my understanding is that it's not the safest bridge in the world. Did they look at that?
Well, the bridge that was the first bridge south of 212, as I understood it, is scheduled for replacement. Now that could be subject to change based on the proposal that Glacial Lakes Energy is coming forward with. The minimum, I gotta be careful, I won't say the right words, but the minimum road use is actually based on the bridge further south near the railroad track crossing as it is now. That is, so the road use is limited by that bridge. Not the bridge
Right,
up at the north end.
That's a struggling bridge. One of the things that we would like to see on this bridge that's closer to Broadway is that if it was designed properly, actually the floodway would go down by about 3 inches, I understand, which would be a positive 2 inches, 3 inches.
I'm not sure what
I think that's what
the impact
Sarasota
is, but I
said.
do know that they need to do a no-rise,
Yeah.
which that's a process that they'll have to
Yeah.
go through, and
But
should
the
be fine.
impact is actually quite great when you look at getting a new bridge in there.
And we've been working with Austin and FEMA on trying to define, what it is that we need to do to comply with their regulations.
So I guess, guys, the question that's before you really is, do you have any issue at first blush of closing Broadway if we can work out a way to have the bridge go across there for HESCO? Isn't that kind of where we're at, guys? That's what I'm looking for. Some input
That was
on
my question, was what do you need from, or what are you looking from us as a council to help, to help you? Do you need us to do A, B, C? besides all of us agreeing, what are some of the things that you think we can do to help?
Well, and I'm not sure I understand the process. I'd have to, I've heard that the process of vacating a road in the county is that the adjoining landowners have to make that request and approve it. Well, in this particular case, we own the land from HESCO to, now we've not closed on it, but there's no reason to feel like we're not going to close on it. We own the land from HESCO to the bypass, and so we would be starting writing a letter or making a formal
And
request.
Stanton, you can help us out on that, what it actually takes to close that, because it's not on a section line, you've told me.
Correct. And what would happen, Jim, is post-closing, once GLE is the owner on both sides, you'd simply do a petition, and those are forms that we have electronically, and we could get to you folks and avoid reinventing the wheel. It's just going to require a legal description of the area that you're petitioning be vacated. And then, of course, we'll visit with the utilities and coordinate all that if there is some, stuff under the roadway that we need to address, but with easements or something like that. But the process itself, there are some documents, hoops that we have to jump through, but it's a pretty easy process.
Well, the question I have is, I want to go back to this bridge. If we were to continue having Broadway there, and if we were to have to replace that bridge as has been looked at and planned for, we would be paying a relatively small portion of the cost of that bridge replacement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If the bridge would still need to be replaced and the state's no longer interested in putting a bridge in there to get to one business, who bears the cost of that bridge?
And I think that's kind of a $1 million question right now.
It might be a $2 million question, actually.
Well, I think it's coming in at $1.2 million for that bridge. So it is $1 million question. And we've had those discussions, with Glacial Lakes and with Watertown Development and the city of Watertown.
And the governor's office
and
of
the governor's,
economics.
yeah, we've been there numerous times talking about this. So I don't think it's actually come to a full conclusion. I don't believe so. I think that needs to be worked out.
Well, can we really say anything without knowing the facts? I mean, we need to know some facts here. Who's going to take care of what? That's a lot of money for one business.
You mean the $1 million on a bridge?
Yeah.
Well, it's a huge amount of money. And go ahead, Craig, if you want to step in.
Craig Atkins with the Watertown Development Company. I think one thing as part of the conversations with the state as it relates to the bridge, really the reality is that both DOT and GOED and the governor's office have said to us, we need you as a community to tell us what your desire is, and then we'll work with you on how the bridge will be replaced. So it's really critical, I guess, that we know whether or not we have the support to close Broadway first before we really understand the bridge costs and how we're going to pay for that. And I think the indications are that DOT has initially indicated that, look, if this isn't going to service any other community or any other businesses, we're kind of hard pressed to do that. But the flip side of it is they've also indicated that, if we only have to do this once and then we can get others to agree to ongoing maintenance or replacement in the future, we may help fund it just so we never have to deal with it again.
I think what you're saying there, Craig, just to make sure we understand what you said, is that if they do put that bridge in there, they would turn that bridge over to the city of Watertown, and we would be responsible for any upkeep on that bridge.
Well, I think, that's something that you all would have to kind of figure out between the city and GLE, but it's not a new precedent. The city has done this before on projects with DOT where we've traded, for instance, when the Southern Connector was built, part of that discussion, and along with the Highway 212-81 corner, was that the city would take over ownership and maintenance of, I think it's Highway 139, the road that runs on the west side of the lake. DOT agreed to resurface that road, and then in exchange for that, the city accepted maintenance and responsibility for it from then on. So it's not that this is a new precedence. It's just they're really looking for us to, and when I say they, I'm talking in general terms, the governor's office, GOED, and DOT, to provide them with some direction from what we'd like to do as a community. And then from that perspective, I think they're open to discussing the most cost-effective way to accomplish that for all the parties. GOED and the governor's office obviously are extremely supportive of this project. I think if any of you were watching any news articles over the weekend, the governor was talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $30, $40 million of rail projects that they've been involved with just in the last 12 to 24 months.
Just to clarify, Brad, you were talking about, when you said one business, you were talking about HESCO, right? Okay, because I don't want to confuse GLE and HESCO in my thoughts.
And thank you, Beth. I guess I would remind that we're talking about two businesses here. We're talking about GLE as well.
That's why I want to make a point.
The benefit of the bridge, if we can close the Broadway, allows us, as we pointed out tonight, to access markets and, maybe back to, I forget who asked the question, might have been Glenn, about what are you going to do if Washington heads south on ethanol? Well, we just remember, we can reach export markets with our Mina plant. We cannot with our Watertown plant.
Well, from my perspective, I think it's something that we, the two things that I have is, one is we would certainly want to go through a public input process in regards to the closure and see what other individuals within the community have for concerns or the lack of concern. We'll get some input there. And then the second comes down to the question of the bridge. Is what's that cost going to be? Who bears that cost? But I think we have to go through that process, and I would certainly support going through that process and seeing where we get.
I'd ask the question if you guys would give us or entertain us with a little blue sky. If this all goes forward, your current plant, I think you said it's about 120 million gallons per year. How big can you grow that plant before it becomes inefficient and you have to build a second plant? And if you had to build a second plant, can you leverage this infrastructure with that? So in other words, where do you guys go from here to grow the plant?
Well, we would, as we're currently configured, we would not be able to increase our production at this point. We are tapped out. I mean, I mentioned earlier that our folks do wonderful things and in to get these cars moving, but there is a limit. So if we were to go forward with this project, we could virtually, assuming it's cost effective, we could double the size of this plant and maybe more. And I'm not saying we would, but all of that's got to pencil out, but it certainly would provide the capability, especially given some of the space that we have. Currently, we have the 20 acres or so that we bought from Development Corp or from the city on the west side of the tracks, right around Dakota Bodies. We have space behind the plant, so that would be the natural location. I don't know that it would be feasible because there would be some operations within the current facility that we would want to piggyback off of, our grain receiving, for instance.
It seems like this is a lot more palatable now that they do have that south bypass road. That's used a lot, and I suppose Broadway because that's the way we've always done it, but it isn't very much to go just to the west a little bit and get on that really nice road. So, I kind of like that idea.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm thinking of as I'm making my notes here, and I don't disagree with with the information or the public input or something like that, but I think one of the things that stands out to me is also the amount of dollars that GLE is putting into this project. If we take a look at the kind of money that they're investing, the increase in the tax base and all those types of things, I think it's worth it for us to be a proponent, for this project. We do a lot of work on new development, and I think it's really good for us to take a look at maintaining and offering what we can to existing buildings that want to, or existing businesses that want to expand. So,
Jim, I have a question for you. When you talk about the sales tax and stuff, what does the city receive for sales tax on the ethanol? Where does that come into play?
Well, it would be on the goods and services we purchase, not on the ethanol. We're talking about on electricity, on natural gas, on anything that we purchase. literally
Like
anything.
natural gas you guys buy on the open market. You don't go through the
Right.
utilities on that.
Right, but
Is
I
there
think
a tax
that,
on that?
Oh, I believe there is. I think there
Is there?
could be as
Okay.
high as 2%.
Okay.
And we're kind of in partnership with them on the purchasing. That's
All right,
it's a
and then the
unique
utilities
setup,
gets a
but-
transportation fee, is that correct?
Well, yeah, I think the main tax dollars are going to come in on the gas itself, and
So if you
that's not
increase
run.
your production, the amount of natural gas you're going to use is going to be beneficial to the city. And in turn,
Exactly.
we then in turn are able to buy natural gas for the city at a lesser dollar amount because of the amount that you buy.
Right.
Am I correct on that? or
Right,
wrong?
right. I mean, the difference in our tax rates in Watertown, I mean, we pay city tax here in Watertown on all the goods and services, and the state comes out and audits our records and says, hey, you didn't pay taxes on this law firm in Minnesota. You need to pay your 6% on that or whatever the rate is. So, I mean, nothing gets by, and up in Mina, that rate's 4%. It's just the state tax because we're out in unincorporated Edmonds County. So there is a difference. I would say that the largest, and I don't know the rates for natural gas. I'm going to guess they're 2%, but I would say that would be one of our largest items. Electricity is big. Chemicals is very large. We spend millions on chemicals, so all of that stuff gets taxed
Steve, do you know for sure what the deal is on the gas? Being with the utility.
Steve Lehner, Watertown Municipal Utilities. GLE buys on the market, and they buy from a supplier, and the supplier will collect 2%, just like we do. Just like we do on the electric side, we collect 2%. That's throughput, the sales tax to the city. GLE buys that from the supply market, and then they turn around and do that transaction. On the electric side, it's throughput. So both those commodities are taxed, and that comes through back to the city. If you increase the question Mayor had, if you increase the volume of production or what you buy in the market, that won't affect our purchases for natural gas for the city of Watertown. We do our own purchases. GLE does their own purchases. So whatever price we get is what we've got for the city. So.
Steve, as long as you're here, let's say this whole thing goes through. At some point down the road, you expand your operations tremendously. Utilities still in a position to be able to service what they're going to need out there, Steve?
Yeah, we're currently in the process of upgrading our Pelican substation. We're adding a 28 MV8 transformer there, so we're doubling our capacity. It's not necessarily just for GLE; it's for the area, but we're adding capacity there for increased loads. GLE has grown, and that's caused us to get up to our operating capacity there. So
Would this be a large expense for your company for the utilities by them doing this loop track? Do you think?
We have right-of-ways in place, public right-of-ways on Broadway. If you close down Broadway like you do any street vacation, we always ask for the utility easements that we have in place to remain in place, so we continue to operate those. Any cost. If you go back to the map, the loop, there are along the extension, there are some overhead lines that are in that area that'll need to be addressed as we move forward. We haven't had any major discussion with GLE on the project, but the project would bear those costs to replace those lines.
High on our list of to-dos.
Yeah, it's in the budget for replacing or moving utility lines. We've seen a few of them as part of the design that need to be moved.
The overhead line that goes down Broadway may only serve the Hanton Farm. I don't know for sure, but without looking at specifics of the detail of the project, we would get to that with GLE. So.
Stanton, can I jump back to that petition? Once everything goes through and they own the property on each side of Broadway, and they would come and get that petition, who are they petitioning that to? The council, the city, or?
Yeah, it would be a petition delivered to the mayor and city council requesting that portion of current road right-of-way be vacated. Yep.
So it would go through a process similar to any of our other
You recall that one that comes to mind is we vacated some property where the current Walgreens and McDonald's
Yeah.
are. It's a petition process. You vacate right-of-way occasionally to, if we've got an 80-foot right-of-way and we only technically need, 66, the mayor and council have gotten petitions in the past for that, to narrow the right-of-way because it's bigger than we actually need. So with working with Jim, we can get him copies of petitions that you folks have received in the past and acted on. And like I said, it's just simply a matter of plugging in the right legal description.
And then as it goes through the process, is that just a one-time review it, look at it, council decision? Does that go through the first reading, second reading, public hearing decision process? How does that work?
It wouldn't be an ordinance. It would be a resolution vacating it. So resolutions only require one reading, but there would be a public process. Just like tonight, the city council would formally take action on it. There'd be a public process. So because it's a resolution, it would only require one reading to become effective. And depending on the timing of things, you folks have in the past adopted resolutions and ordinances that say you adopt the emergency clause that says this is necessary for the immediate preservation. If Glacial Lakes it just wants that assurance that in fact the vacation is going to happen, you guys could include language in that it says, look, the date this resolution is passed, it becomes effective, so there isn't that waiting period in case that's necessary.
Okay, good. Thank you. That answers a lot.
Now that would be potential referable to a vote of the public then, I'm assuming, correct?
Yeah, a resolution would be subject to referendum, yep.
Jim, I have a question for you. It's a lot of that land, that Hanton land, especially to the north, when we've had floods, is underwater. And the proximity of this to the input to Lake Pelican and to the Sioux River that then heads downriver, is that being considered in this design? And what type of plans are in place that would prevent, if there was a leak or something, that would prevent that from getting into the river or into Lake Pelican? You've got 96 cars you're going to have there, right? So what kind of safety measures environmentally are being looked at in this design?
Well, as far as I presume you're speaking to the 96 cars, full unit train sitting there. I mean, the likelihood of all 96 cars leaking at once would be very, very remote, if at all. I think a spill. I mean, we've got the same risk at Glacial Lakes Energy. The property drains toward the river, so I guess I could argue that there's maybe a greater disbursement of that risk. We've got an impeccable safety and environmental compliance record, and we would be leaning on what we're currently doing, which is really complying with whatever's out there, and certainly and ethanol is biodegradable. Let's not forget that ethanol is biodegradable, and I'm not going to say it won't kill fish and wildlife, because if it's in high concentrations, that will happen. But it's a lot different than oil.
I would just add that I think the objective of a working session discussion like this is to say, what's your general feeling? What do you think? So, in my opinion, is we have to recognize there are a few issues we've got to work out with Broadway, but with the potential of this project, I don't see any reason why we would slow it down.
And that's what I'm going to do right now. I need to get a feeling from you guys if you think that it's a solution to Glacial Lake that they get this loop track going by closing Broadway, and I would just get a feeling from everyone as we go down here, so that they have a feeling and they understand where we're at as council moving forward.
I have basically no issues other than what results in the bridge, and once we work through the process on that, I'd just like to know what the concept's going to be there for HESCO, and obviously they've been there, so we can't just ignore that situation. We've got to work through that, but otherwise I'm in favor of trying to make this happen.
I would say, that's my ward out there, those people that are going to be affected most by this. And my concern is safety. If you're going to be diverting 1,100 cars a day, is it? Most of them will go to 212. Right now, we have no stoplight, no roundabout, no nothing right now. So, curious as to when that's slated to be done.
Are you talking South 81 and 20?
Yeah.
Not Highway 20, but 20th Avenue?
Yes.
I think that is slated for, they're working on getting it lined up. If I'm not mistaken, it's for next year. Is it not done? It's either 16 or 17.
It would be something.
This would all kind of flow about the proper timing for that.
Okay. Yeah, that's.
Because that is a safety issue. down there.
It certainly is.
Yeah. Randy?
But with that, I'd be.
That being said, though, I do think the safety issue as far as the rail and the blockage of the highway would be a much better situation than it currently is.
Much better, much better. I mean, you're going to eliminate a lot of crossing on the highway. That's going to make it a lot safer there. You guys are basically, after you make your acquisition of this property, you're going to own probably 95 to 98% of the Broadway, right, on both sides?
Correct, yeah.
And as long as you've worked with the other property owners and they have no objection, I would find no reason to object to it myself. I want to see Glacial Lakes be just as aggressive as possible. I like the word export, put it that way. I like to see somebody else's money in our pocketbook, so I would have no objection at all. I mean, you'd get my total support, so.
I guess I'll just disclose I am a shareholder in Glacial Lakes Energy, but you've been a wonderful part of the community since you got up and running a number of years ago, but I would definitely like to see this go forward.
Yep. And like I stated earlier, I'm certainly looking to go forward with it and to look at the process, making sure that we identify some of the issues and concerns, and then see where it takes us.
Yeah, and just I'm going to just throw in my 2 cents. I think it's a great idea, and I think Watertown will support you.
Big project, keep it moving.
Yep, good project. Work through a few challenges and get her done.
At first glance, it looks to me like this is a relevant project. It looks like it's viable, and I think it will help in our economic development overall for the community. You know, I will say I think that there are questions in regard to the bridge that we still need to answer as we move forward. But otherwise, this project does seem like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like the idea, the project, so I would say move forward.
Everybody else has said everything else that I need. That's what happens when you sit at the end, you know. But I have always been in support of this project, and I have a little bit of understanding about trains. And I would love to not have to sit so long on 4th Avenue waiting for the train to go back and forth. And I can also hear them go crash, crash. But I think it's a great project, and I think anytime we can support a business that wants to invest here and reinvest and keep on investing, I think it's good for us.
Next time, Beth, I'll start with you.
Please do, Steve.
I'll
That
do
would be really nice.
That's the plan. Somebody remind me, okay? Yeah.
Okay, so when you point over here, Steve, I'll just point it back across.
Yeah, I was to say, Beth, you're up. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We sure appreciate you taking the time for us. I think you have a pretty good feel as to how the council lives on that and breathes on it. I think by working with Craig and the Department of Transportation and the governor's office, I know we've had meetings with the DOT and Pier together, and they seem very positive about it. They were excited to hear about this. So I'm just really thinking we're ready to go.
A project like this might also even speed up the roundabout on 81. So
there you go. Well, very good.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jim, excuse me, did you say that you had pictures of this map? Or the map?
I have copies of this entire presentation. I'll hand them out to you.
And the map.
And the map, yes.
Yeah, I like the map especially. That'd be great. Helps me
you
answer
gave
questions.
a time frame in that whole thing on the presentation, didn't you, Jim? It was the fall of 15 and working into 16. Perfect. Okay, at this time I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and we'll be back in about 11 minutes to start the city council meeting.
Hello, and welcome to the Monday, November 2nd City Council meeting, and we'd like to call it to order. At this time, we'd have Jody Ingalls, the Pastoral Care Prairie Lakes Healthcare System, lead us in prayer.
Good evening, and this reminds me of the story of Jesus that to let the little children come on to him. And as a member of the City of Watertown, I'm very honored tonight to be able to say the prayer to that. The boys have come here onto the City Council meeting to lead this. And so at this time, we would like to open in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunities that you give us each and every day to learn from each other and to have an open forum with the Boy Scouts here tonight at the City of Watertown prayer meeting and council meeting. And we're just saying to please bless this meeting, to have folks open to new ideas and concepts, and to let the troops learn tonight as they are experiencing something out of the ordinary. Let the council members also be of wisdom and leadership to these young boys, and as they grow, to help our nation to be strong as they come up into the ranks of leadership roles in our community and our nation. Thank you, God, for the blessings you bestow upon us, and we just ask that you cover this meeting in prayer tonight and watch over the things and the events of Watertown and the surrounding communities in our nation. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
And we'll now do the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we'll have Shelley do roll call.
Thank you. Albertson? Bueller? 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 Probably too young for that. Danforth?
Here.
Manty?
Here.
Riefenberger?
Here.
Roby?
Here.
Solom?
Here.
Thorson?
Here.
Tupper?
Here.
Vilhauer?
Here.
Thank you.
I think what we should do now is just quickly have each one introduce themselves. And if you'll just give us your quick name, and we'll just pass down. Let's start on Beth's side. Speak into that microphone too, okay, so we hear you guys.
Okay. I'm Trevor Sorensen from Troop 209.
I'm Caden Files from Troop 209. I'm Jaron Tharaldson from Troop 209.
I'm Ethan Oyen from Troop 209.
I'm Joey Nolner from Troop 209.
I'm Tony Chido, also from Troop 209.
I'm Samuel James Smith the first from Troop 209, and I like turtles.
I'm Ethan Mogg, and I am from Troop 8.
I'm Kendrick Thompson from Troop 209. I'm Ryan Osborne from Troop 209.
I'm Alex Ervik from Troop 209.
So could I have a motion and a second for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
So
Third.
we need to get that. It was so moved
Second.
by who? Albertson, second by Manty. Okay. For discussion. Any questions? Any questions?
Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Approval, could I have a motion and a second for the approval of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second.
Did you get that, Shell? Roby, second by Danforth.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. So, retail liquor license renewal for 212 Casino. DBA 212 Casino for the calendar year 2016. And at this time, I'll open the public hearing. If there is anyone here to speak in favor of or against. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. At this time, I'm looking for a motion and second for discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
If you guys would, if you could, when you do the motion, either, say who you're motioning for, whether it be for Albertson or Bueller, or put your hand up so that we know, because we have to get this on record, who is making the motions, okay? So, who made the motion? Okay, that'd be Solom. Who seconded that? That'd be Bueller. All right. Yep. Did you get it, Shell? Okay. Any questions?
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question. Three. Can you hear me now? Okay. 3, 4, and 5 are specifically spelled out, but that's also included as part of the consent agenda, which we just approved. Why are we acting on those separately?
No, these are totally different. These, pardon me?
No, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, these actually had some type of a violation during the last year, whether they sold to minors or something like that. And that's why we actually, about a year ago, put it in place that when there was a violation, they had to come back to the city council to get that approval. All right? So we couldn't put them on the consent agenda.
Scott, do you know the extent on, and we'll ask this question probably on each one of these, at least the first two anyway, I believe that's what was the extent of the violation that these had, and what was it for? How many have they had?
Sure. Probably the easiest way to explain this would be a news release that we put out on March 11, 2015. At that time, it said the Watertown Police Department conducted alcohol compliance checks at 9 various on- and off-sale alcohol establishments in Watertown. 6 of the 9 businesses that were checked failed. Those that passed were Johnny Ringo's Casino, Willie's, and the Gold Mine Casino. Those that failed were Four Seasons, 212 Casino, Number 1 Casino, Magic Mile Casino, Winner's Circle Casino, and Foxy's Casino. So it basically was an alcohol compliance check to see if these businesses were selling to minor individuals. As far as the number of times, I don't know that answer other than this news release.
We don't know whether there were other violations on these two.
I don't believe that there were, but what I do have is the news release from back in March, so I would say that there probably haven't been any other violations.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action.
Aye.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, we got to get a couple of hands up in the air. Who made the first motion? You did? Put your hand up. Okay, motion by Danforth, second by... Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Duh. Don't mind me. Yeah. You got it, man. You're okay. All right. Yeah, how long have I been doing this? Now ask for opposed.
Any for opposed? Hearing none. Approved. Retail liquor license renewal for Number 1 Casino, DBA Number 1 Casino for calendar year 2016. I will now open for public hearing. Is there anyone here that will speak in favor of or against? Hearing none, I'll close public hearing. And I'll now look for a motion and a second for council action.
I will motion.
For discussion, rather.
Second the motion.
Any questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Retail liquor license renewal for M&N Foxy's, DBA Foxy's for the calendar year 2016. Now open for public hearing. Anyone here to speak in favor of or against? Okay, close the public hearing. Look for motion and second for discussion.
I'll make a motion. Move it.
Second.
Motion by Roby, second by Danforth.
Okay, I'm now looking for council action. All those for say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
What's that?
Application for transfer of ownership of a retail malt beverage at South Dakota Farm Wine license from Watertown Confectionery, LLP, DBA Ghost Town Winery, 1329 9th Avenue Southeast, to Watertown Confectionery, DBA Ghost Town Winery at the same location. Name change only. Now open for public hearing. Anyone speaking in favor of or against? Hearing none, I'll close it. I'll now look for a motion and a second for discussion.
Second.
It was a motion by Beth and a second by Glenn. And now you look.
And I will now look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Ordinance number 15 through 27, amending section 19.0501, defining the authority to install traffic control devices within and for the city of Watertown. And then, Stan, can you help us?
I can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the last meeting, the council had first reading on this proposed revision, and if you look at second reading, there was a change, a minor change to that. But I mentioned that during first reading, so the council would be expecting it. But the ordinance that's before you tonight is the one that we discussed briefly at first reading, and I think the mayor would recommend that it be approved.
I'm now looking for a motion in a second.
So move it.
Second.
I think, was that a motion by Bueller and a second by Danforth?
Any questions?
I just had a question or a comment. As I look at the ordinance, the people that we're looking at adding or on this committee all report to the mayor. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm just thinking that may not have been a bad idea to have somebody from an elected capacity on that committee. I just want to throw that out as a concern of mine on this.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, make one point of clarification that the proposed ordinance that's before you tonight does not actually establish a committee, because in the event a committee were established, that would trigger the open meetings statutes, and so the language of the ordinance is clear that it's not a committee, but you're right, the reporting process is through those department heads to the mayor.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. (2015) Street Improvement Project Assessment Roll Resolution number 15 through 26. And I'll now open it for public hearing. Anyone wanting to speak in favor of or against? Hearing none, I will close public hearing. And I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion.
Motion. Second.
That's motion by Albertson and a second by Bueller. And then
Okay, and I'll turn it over to Shane now.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. This project was brought to the engineering staff by petition. So the project was developed to improve an alley known as Alley Project 1501-B. So we proceeded with construction and taking competitive bids. The original contract was in the amount of $17,887. There was some city participation in the project, and so after that and some deductions by minor change order, the assessable amount was $15,010.38. There is 700 lineal feet of side frontage on this project. So the resulting assessments are based on $21.44 per lineal foot and will be distributed to those properties benefited on that basis. So staff recommends proceeding with the
Shane, this is just to establish the amount, and then the property owner still have the opportunity to pay that before it would be a property assessment yet?
Correct, yep. Any other questions?
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action.
Motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First reading of ordinance number 15 through 28, amending section 2.0103, regulating packaged liquor license within and for the city of Watertown. Could I have a motion and a second for discussion?
oh, I'm sorry. Hold it for three. But turn it over to Stan. And tell
Okay.
Stan. Give it to Stan.
Okay, I'm going to give it to Stanton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If the council recalls, during the last work session, a conversation was whether or not the city should consider amending the ordinance, which currently prohibits on-sale licensees from selling any kind of distilled spirits on Sunday, where currently only malt beverages is allowed for off-sale licensees to sell. So it was the council's recommendation that this ordinance revision be brought forward for consideration. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
I think Stanton, there are some questions from the council that might like to make a change at this time on this. So you're welcome to, as a council, to speak on this. I know we didn't get a lot of time involved on it. It is first reading, but there's a good chance to change this if you wanted.
Yeah, I do have a question. You know, I'd like to see us do away with the time restriction, you know, when they can open. You know, just get rid of that part, have it like any other day of the week. That's one thing I'd like to see changed. I don't know what everybody else feels.
Thank you, Alderman Thorson. My memory during this work session last time was when the proponent came before you and talked about the hours. I believe it was maybe the mayor or somebody at the work session asked the applicant, the proponent of this change, whether those times were acceptable, and they said yes. So that's why it's before you. But I can certainly make that revision for second reading.
I would like to see that. I've spoke to him ever since then, and there was some misunderstanding.
I think you'd really run into a lot of opposition if you were to try to change Sunday liquor to start any time before, what is it now, 12 o'clock? 1 o'clock? Yeah.
Correct, 1 o'clock. And those times, I believe, are set by state statute in Title 35.
State statutes or city ordinance?
City ordinance is a bit more restrictive than state statute. Currently, state statute would allow them to be open longer, but to Alderman Thorson's point, if you want it to be consistent with state statute, it would be like you suggested, it'd be open longer.
Like I say, I think we just end up with a lot of opposition there. I think we're going to open up a can of worms if we do that. Then you're also going to get the on-sale license holders that are going to want to open up at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning, and I don't think that's the intent of anybody, but they have they would have that same option to come back and ask us to allow them to open at the same time the liquor stores did. So
I thought it was noon and not 1 o'clock. That may be incorrect. That may be on sale versus off sale.
Currently, the way the ordinance reads is, as you have before you, the proposed change that currently the ordinance says no licensee shall sell or allow to be consumed any malt beverages prior to 1 o'clock on any Sunday. Packaged liquor licenses may sell malt beverage on Sunday from 1 o'clock to 12 o'clock. And my memory is that the person who came before you said 6 o'clock on Sunday would be fine. The trips back and forth on 212, I guess the thought was they're not required to stay open until midnight. They can close whenever they want to, but the current ordinance gives them the flexibility to stay open that late on Sunday. Then it's a choice for the owner to make.
Well, from my position is I think we should leave it at 1 o'clock, and if the current licensees, the license holders, want to come at the second reading and come before the council and justify an earlier start time, then they should be doing that. But unless that happens and there's good reason to change it, I think we should be staying with the 1 o'clock.
And 1 o'clock is set by state statute in Title 35, and even though Watertown's a home rule charter community, the legislature and peers said, look, when it comes to all things alcohol regulation, even if you're a home rule charter, state statute has preempted the field, which means cities can adopt their own rules. You can, if they want to self-impose a shorter opening time, they can, but state statute spells out when they can be opened. Correct. 1 o'clock is the time there's, unless it's an on-sale licensee. this is off-sale licensees, but on-sale licensees, if you go have a meal at a establishment like a Minerva's or someplace, they can start serving at 11 o'clock on Sunday.
So it was really a non-event to even talk about it. We should have just, if I understand you correctly, 1 o'clock is the time state statute says. So it's as is.
Correct, and yep, that state statute says they can't open until 1
Right,
o'clock.
but we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the next one. We'll leave the hours as it currently states on the first reading.
First reading of ordinance number 15 through 29, amending section 7.0907, regulating residency requirements of officers and employees of the city of Watertown. And I'll turn that over to Stanton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the council knows, this was part of the last meeting where the council suggested that this be brought forward for consideration to amend the current residency requirements, which requires city employees to live within Cottington County. This revision, if approved, would open that up to allow city employees to live anywhere within the state of South Dakota.
Danton, can I ask what's the difference between an officer and an employee?
I think it's a distinction without a difference. I do. I don't think there is a difference. I mean, I guess technically there are officers, but pretty much everybody's an employee.
If you could have Doug to come up.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to give you my thoughts on this this new ordinance. Watertown Fire Rescue probably wouldn't be in favor of this because of a couple reasons. One of them is most of our big fires require a 20-minute response. That's when our most labor-intensive part of that fire is. And so guys that are employees that are any further out than that aren't as useful. So we want an all response on a large fire, and this would inhibit us to have guys come in on that type of a response with being too far out on a change for residency. Also, if we're works the same for EMS, so this could potentially cause us some problems.
But maybe you can address the also the 24 on, 48 off, if they live like in Brookings or Sioux Falls or something.
Yes, good. So we work a 24-hour shift schedule for the majority of our department, and 24 hours on and 48 hours off, and that would give us some more leeway to probably even live further out and not be able to respond, because we'd only have to report to duty every third day versus an 8-hour employer, something that would have to come in every day. So that part of it too would potentially have us hiring employees that could go be further out than.
How are you? Have you had to address the situation with the county dropping their residency requirements? Has that impacted you at all?
I don't believe it really hasn't. The majority of our employees live within the city limits or within a few miles of the city limits, and there's some question on Cottington County when you're looking at 26, 27 miles out to the northwest. Really hasn't impacted us. We don't have any employees that, to my knowledge, that live out there that far out, and really hasn't been a problem as far as Cottington County goes.
Yeah, because my understanding is that they dropped their residency requirements altogether, the county?
Oh, I'm sorry. I maybe misunderstood the question. So the county dropped their residency requirements. I don't know if they've had any issues with that at all.
Doug, I got a question for you. When you have your employees, and they are not on duty, are they on call?
Yeah, so right now we have a call-in list. It's a voluntary call-in list, and we pick our overtime from that. We currently do not have pagers. If we did have pagers, that would also create a problem, because if you are on a pager or any department that does carry pagers, you would be required to be within a certain distance from duty to be able to respond in the fire and EMS. Yes, it would call in. The call-in would be a problem if we didn't have pagers. So right now it's a voluntary call-in list. If there's nobody on that list, then we just start down the rotation and call people in on like large fires.
Stanton, what kind of rabbit hole do we go down if we start exempting a specific department here or there?
Well, I don't know about a rat hole, but I think that I understand your question, Beth. I think that rabbit hole. Okay. Well, I know, and not wanting to single out any particular position in the city, but I know in other conversations we've had about this, back in 2014, I believe, when we were amending it to expand it to Cottington County, I believe some comments were made in relation to emergency services folks, like picking someone out like a circulation person at the library. Is it essential that they live within a certain geographic distance from their place of employment, as opposed to a life safety person who, to Doug's point, might need to respond? But I think if the city wants to single out, or maybe that's the poor choice of words, but make distinctions between classes of employees, I guess where would you start and where would you end? It's at the airport, you may say, hey, if there's a snow event and the plane needs to leave, that's an essential person, and they ought not to be living in Mobridge.
Well, that was the question I wanted to know. Is it a cascade situation of one thing after another?
Stan, couldn't we put language in here that this doesn't supersede what a job description, so that this applies unless their job description supersedes that? Something to that effect, so then the fire department could have control of that.
Well, yeah, we could. I think the only thing you'd want to avoid is if somebody came to work and their offer of employment didn't say, oh, by the way, so they're already in the city employ, and then we're sort of changing the rules midstream. But I think moving forward, we could include language like that in future employees, but I think with working with Doug and his command staff, if you're going to make a distinction between fire and maybe police or whatever distinction you can make, maybe we could sit down and enter into some memorandum of understanding with those collective bargaining units that look, if you're living within Cottington County today, you're going to agree to not change.
I understand, Doug. I understand where you're coming from. And right now, the farthest point in the county is approximately what distance? 28?
27, 28 miles,
Let's just
somewhere in
call it
that range,
28.
yep.
Maybe what we should do is, instead of going statewide on this, maybe what we should be doing is talk about a 28-mile radius of Watertown. Or 30, some number, I don't care. But if we're already dealing with 28 one way, why not deal with it on a circular basis and leave it at that then? Because we're already dealing with the 28 miles now, and we've got communities that are supporting this community every day, and certainly well within the 28-mile distance. And if they've got people there that would be good employees for the city of Watertown, I don't want to miss that opportunity. So maybe instead of the statewide allowance, maybe we should open it up and just and go to a 28-mile radius, and that's just a thought.
And I think that's been discussed, to go with the radius. It's just a matter if we go 27 miles, 30 miles, or 40 miles, whatever the council really wants to look at, we can put that and have Stanton revise this ordinance. So maybe tomorrow just send me an email where you're all kind of standing on for the mileage. And Doug's, you got to be okay with that. I mean, with the 27 and.
I probably don't have much room to defend it when we've already got 27 miles up north, and do I see a lot of my employees moving out to the outer limits of the 28 miles? Probably not. So.
But they're pretty limited at this point of where they could go. Or if we open up to the state, it's a whole different thing, I think. So. You said that they're somewhat required to respond within 20 minutes?
Well, the thing is, like I said, currently we don't have pagers. If we ever did go to a pager-type system, they would have to make plans. If they did live out 28 miles, they would have to make plans to be closer than that, possibly, if they were if they were carrying a pager, to be there within reason. But
Right.
currently, we have 28 miles now, so it wouldn't.
Yeah.
It
One
wouldn't
of,
make a difference.
one of the things also, Doug, I know that Mike Berger is not really in favor of this at the wastewater plant. He's got 3-4 employees there that is on call, most of the time. And if there's a problem at the wastewater plant, somebody's going to get called in. And for them to be out 25 miles, I know they have that ability right now, but we don't have anybody out that far. But they do have to carry their phones. They have to carry that, and they can be called in. And we expect them there. If there's a problem, if there's lights that go off and we have red lights, we need to get this taken care of. And until you as a council allow me to put red lights on our cars, which would be kind of fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
But anyhow, I think we really need to look at this a little heavier than right now. And I would say we need to tweak it before it comes to second reading.
Mayor, we have some other folks here too. I think the police department might be wanting to represent just a little bit tonight, as well as the street department. Is Rob here? Okay. We talked earlier today about some of the challenges they might encounter with this. Obviously, weather is the big thing we got to contend with here. Road closures, that kind of thing. So if we could accommodate them just to speak their piece a little bit on this, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have spoke with Chief McPeak this afternoon about this proposed ordinance. Chief McPeak's main concern was inclement weather. Should we get a snowstorm and we have an employee that lives, 15, 20 miles out, are they going to be able to report for work, or are they going to have to take a day of vacation or something that day, which would then in turn cause us to, bring in overtime for another employee to fill that position. Other than that, we really don't have any major concerns or disagreements with the ordinance. Our main concern is weather. I would say that I do have a communications officer that drives from in the Wallace area just about every day, and I can't recall that she has never made it to work. So for us, it's just one of those deals that's the only thing we'd be concerned about is weather.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, kind of the same deal. As far we clean the streets and stuff when it snows, I need my guys there. The closer they are, the better, I guess, for our department. But and then also we do have there's always a guy on call every night. So if you have a big tree that falls over, the PD in the middle of the night will call our on-call guy, and they'll come into town and take care of it. So. And that does happen quite often, where one of my guys will get called in during the week for various things and to take care of that. And if they're out a ways, it's going to take some time to respond to that. So, and the snow, that's probably the biggest thing, snow and ice. So.
Okay, I think what we'll do is at our next department head, we're going to have that discussion with each and every one of you so that we know where we stand on that. So
I do
we'll
have
go
one
that direction.
I do have one quick question. If a person is on call and they get called in, when does the clock start?
Currently when they punch in, when they come to the street department and punch in.
Okay, so if they're on call, they don't. As soon as they get the call, they're not on the clock, are they?
Not necessarily. That's kind of not the way things are going right now during our negotiations, and that'll be something we have to talk about. Fair enough? Is that fair enough answer, Stanton? Okay, just so you know. All right, let's move on.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
First reading of ordinance number 15 through 30, amending section 6.0301, regulating monuments at Mount Hope Cemetery within and for the city of Watertown.
Is Tom in the audience? Tom, come on up here, will you? Thanks. You're hiding behind that pole.
If you could just fill us in a little bit on what's going on.
Okay, we have an ordinance that says that the monuments have to be made out of granite. What the monument salespeople are doing is they want to change that to, they can use like a quartzite. And that's where we are.
And if you would, Tom, introduce yourself to everybody in the...
Tom Weeks, I'm the Watertown Mount Hope, the cemetery manager. Been out there for 22 years. This ordinance that we're talking about has been on the books for longer than I've been there. It's just, they want to change it.
Tom, what is the reason for that? Why is it that they made it exclusive to granite? Any idea why?
It was just it was on the books when I took over as the manager.
One of the things I understood from another cemetery experience was that it was durability. It was how it lasted. If somebody looks at some of those really, really old headstones that have crumbled and kind of been pockmarked over time. So the idea was to go with the kind of material that would not have that happen to. That's where that came from.
And just for your information, the other cemetery in town changed their policy to allow these just recently.
Yeah, that's the second question I have, is the longevity of it. Is it going to be as good?
I don't know. Buck from the Monument Works is here.
Yeah, if you're talking,
Come on up.
If you're talking quartz, you're looking at similar. You're saying maybe like a limestone or something that's soft than weathers, but these other stone products, it just gives you some more opportunity to offer something maybe in other colors or than just a straight granite and things.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I'm Buck Kraus. I work for Watertown Monument Works, and I've been there since 1981. And the issue has kind of come to the forefront because this quartzite material, which is quarried down in near Sioux Falls and is used in a lot of construction projects, is a very durable product. It's much more durable than marble or limestone. And so, as Bill said, it gives us another color to choose from, and it's become more popular. It's used quite widely down in the Sioux Falls area. So we feel that it's a durable alternative for people that are looking for something different.
Does it also allow different pricing points? Is that, or doesn't make any difference?
I don't think the pricing has anything to do with it.
Buck, I got a question. You know, when I read that, I understand what granite is, but I don't know what similarly approved like stone. Approved by who, I don't know. But do you have a list of stone product that you offer to your customers for the monuments? So you've got granite and you go down this list, right?
Typically in the past, it's been granite or marble. I didn't bring a chemical composition of the material, if that's what you're asking me for.
Well, no. I'm talking about the generic name, granite, marble. I mean, so those are the two, and you're asking for a third to be added? Is that what was the product you said they used down in Sioux Falls? Not the chemical makeup, because I don't understand chemistry very well.
It's called quartzite or Katori stone.
Okay, so why can't we have state those three items then and be done with it?
That's a good question, Mike.
And
when I saw it, I had the exact same question. It says similar approved stone, and who's going to make the approval? So is somebody going to have to come before the city council every time they want something a little unusual or different?
Buck, if we had to ask, what would you recommend? I mean, of the materials, if you had to say we could do 3 different types of materials, what would that be? That you think would be durable enough that we could use, that we could classify for this ordinance?
I would recommend, I guess, granite, marble, and quartzite, and Katori stone.
And if I could, Mayor, I think, John, you were at the Park and Rec Board, you serve on there, that I think the idea was to allow for some flexibility because the Monument Works folks that came to the Park and Rec Board meeting said 20 years ago this wasn't a common practice. This kind of stone was largely unknown or certainly wasn't being used in this capacity. But with regard to Mike, Alderman Danforth, your question, the language of the current ordinance, and this obviously can be changed, that all monuments to be erected must first be approved as to size, text to be included, location on lot, foundations and kind of stone to be used by the board or the director of Parks, Recreation, Forestry, or their designee. So there currently is a gatekeeper in the code that isn't being proposed to be changed. This is just making clear that there is that flexibility, because currently it says monuments are to be constructed of granite, free from defects or variegations, whatever those are. But I think that the idea, in talking with the Monument Works people at the Park and Rec Board meeting last week, that today it's this kind of stone, 20 years from now maybe something different. So let's have that flexibility in there, knowing that there's a gatekeeper for any kind of stone that's going to be used.
Are you saying it's currently in the process that for every stone somebody has to go to somebody and have it approved before, and then the lettering and everything else before they can, so that comes to you then, and at this point in time you decide? Yep. Okay.
Tom, what are you comfortable with?
What's that?
I say, what are you comfortable with?
When we got taken over by Park and Rec, we sat down with the council members at that time, and we went through the ordinances and the list of rules. And at that time when I took over, those are what we decided, this is how we're going to run the cemetery. That's what I've been going by for 12 years, is what we decided that night. When the council come out, we had the meeting out at the cemetery, we walked through, we talked different things. This is what we come up with.
Would it make sense to classify, use the 4 types that you had mentioned, Buck, and then have something that perhaps says we would have an option to, or the Park and Rec Board or whoever the experts are would have an option to look at other materials if needed?
I guess I wouldn't have a problem with that, Bruce. I think the city's intent in being able to regulate this is to keep a nice and proper looking facility, that people just can't drag in something that's unsightly, and so I definitely agree there needs to be some regulation.
Right, and I think when they mentioned to Tom that you know, you have to look at each and every stone and you have to do this, I think if we put names up there, we're going to be back here doing the same thing in 15, 20 years, and they're going to look at a different type of a rock of some type. So I personally think that that's okay as long as we have that gatekeeper coming to Tom or the Park and Rec. So, okay, let's move on.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Approval of middle school addition plat, resolution number 15 through 27. And can I have a motion and a second for discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Roby, second by Danforth. Okay, Shane?
Ray, you want to put my screen up? Okay, this is kind of a cleanup item. This plat is to finish up the middle school project. As you see on the screen, the hatched area encompasses the current middle school grounds. It includes improvements that were done this summer on 11th Street Northeast. The roundabout was kind of included as a portion of that project, and also 18th Street was extended easterly to the limits of the property line. So this plat covers those street improvements and the property that was developed for the middle school. This is kind of at the wrong end of the project, but for whatever reason, this part of the process was dropped when my predecessor left and just didn't get finished until this point in time. So we recommend approval of the plat, and it kind of just finishes up the project.
Is there any questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
You know, I think I'm gonna handle this next one here. The Eastwoods 18th edition. We do have the plat resolution. that we'll have Shane take a look at and do for us. But we're going to, on that particular one, we'll go for a motion, a second for discussion purposes.
Motion.
So moved.
Okay, who we got? Okay, we got a motion by Danforth, second by Solom. Shane, if you'll take this platform, because I do want to also talk about B for the development agreement in a minute.
Okay. Just for clarification, I did hand out a revised development agreement to all the council members for their review. That is slightly different from the one that appeared in the packet. So Eastwood 18th, on my screen, it doesn't quite fit on my video screen, but it includes improvements on 12th Avenue North, 27th Street East, 10th Avenue North, and little stub pieces of 26th Street Southeast. It's approximately 30 lots of development, a proposal for improvement. It is consistent with our orderly annexation. We annexed this property here in recent council meetings. It also meets all of the requirements of the plating and our process. We're at the point where the Plan Commission has reviewed this, has recommended approval by the council.
Okay, any questions for Shane on this plat?
Not necessarily a question, Shane, but you did clarify the water situation at the Plan Commission meeting, that there was a sensible way to take care of water issues in that area.
Correct. A very small portion of this up in the northeast corner and on the very southwest corner includes water that would not flow through the planned Outlot A water quality control feature, and we've worked with the developer to create temporary, very small temporary water quality facilities until such time that the next phase is constructed where the permanent water quality feature is planned. So we do have some contingency things built into this. It's going to work out very well.
Shane, I got a couple questions.
Yep.
We have a minimum lot size for R1 development, which is, I can't remember, 9,000?
9,000. Yep.
I believe there's one or more of these lots that do not adhere to that.
There's one.
One.
And that is scheduled to be the water quality treatment lot, and that will be deeded over to the city for our maintenance and use.
So that's that lot.
Yep.
Secondly, in our requirements for R1, do we have a width requirement, or is it just purely a square footage? A frontage width?
75 feet.
Okay. A lot of these do not meet that, correct?
No, I believe they all make 75 feet on one side or the other. I don't recall any that are less than that.
Well, let's take a look at that, because
I guess I'm looking at them and I'm seeing all 80s.
frontage that needs to be 75, or is it anywhere on the lot?
No, the frontage. These are 82, for instance. Across here, this is 75, 50,
Shane,
I
I
think.
see one on 25th Street. Is that the lot you had talked about earlier? And that's
Yeah, that's a 70-foot.
That's the 70 foot.
That's the only one, and that's the
the
one
only
that's
one
non-conforming.
under
Yep,
75 and under 9,000.
correct. Yep.
Because that will be the water control lot, so.
Correct. That, it will not be buildable.
That's correct.
Shane, I think it's obvious you're going to stub those streets and those will continue south. What's the plan and when will those streets will be continued south?
Okay. There is no, part of the preliminary plan for this project, it basically ends at North Ave, or at 9th Avenue, because south of 9th Avenue is a different property owner. So this development's going to continue south as far as 9th Avenue and then easterly, and there's 3 more phases past this phase that is planned for this area. So right now, it will take, this development will end at 9th Avenue, and then it'll take participation from another landowner to continue that development to the south and east.
Shane, I had mentioned some time ago about our need to plan for a through street or a collector street as we, in this whole area of town. Is that, I just want to make sure that that gets done.
Okay.
And we're not.
It is. The next phase, phase 2, the street that's will be 28th Street East is going to be the new collector.
A north-south collector
Yep,
street.
correct.
Perfect. Any other questions on that? Hearing none, I will look. Oh, I'm sorry.
What is a plat?
Shane, do you want to tell them what a plat is?
Sure. A plat is a tool that the community uses to orderly subdivide the community into usable lots. So everybody's home is usually on one lot. So you and your family occupy a lot, and your neighbors on either side of you occupy a different lot. And so when you buy land, this is how we subdivide land and break it into smaller pieces that people use and build their homes. And you know, in some parts of the town, these lots are built to build the grocery store or, you know, other, you know, Hardee's or whatever other property uses there are in the community. So this is just a tool and a method for which city or governments can orderly bring property into use in the community. It's we use it as a map, but it's much more than a map. It has legally binding descriptions so that, you know, if somebody buys a property, they can actually describe it and own it very easily.
And this is all put up at the courthouse. This is all
Yep.
registered. It's all taken care of. So all the boundaries are there. Okay, I think at this time, if there's no more questions, we'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We're going to go on to just this last part, B, authorization for the mayor to sign a development agreement with Peggy Haugen and Joy Nelson. Now, we've had numerous discussions on this development agreement, and I just want you to know that everything has gone extremely smooth, except for the part that's on the existing development agreement. And Shane did make a new copy of this one. We had conversations about park dedication. There was a curveball thrown to the developers the other day at the Park and Rec Department. I'm not sure if they understood exactly what they're doing. In the past, the city has always taken a look at a chunk of agriculture ground, and they have 10 acres of land, and they pay approximately $1,000 an acre to be put into the park fund. What happened the other night is the Park and Rec took a look at that and said, wait a minute, I want to see the plat of this thing, and then I want to know what each individual lot is worth, and I want to add that all up, and then I want to take 5% of that. So what happened by that discussion, it took, did you kill me over there? I thought I died. It took the dollars from about a $10,000 park dedication fund to well over $50,000. And what that does is it puts those dollar costs on each and every individual lot that they're trying to sell. Now, as you guys all know, Watertown has always been criticized for being expensive to build. That's one of the reasons that I think we need to stop, and we need to have something that goes to the Park and Rec as some type of something we can tell them to do, that they need to continue to use the existing way, either give them the land, which the Nelson Haugens are willing to do for park dedication. They're absolutely willing to do that, or use the rules that have been used for years now within the city. And that's like Scott Munger just brought one in. It cost about the same 10 acres. It cost him $10,000. The church just brought in one up in the northeast up there. They put in a small park dedication that they had to have for their lot. Cost them about $500. I think it was wrong. I don't think the thought process was right. And I think we need to address that as a council, and we need to get something to the Park and Rec so they understand what we expect for that park dedication. I don't think we can expect a developer to give 50 grand for a park.
I want to agree with you on that, Mayor, and I want to back up a little bit too. Years back, what started was developments were getting done and nobody was planning much for the park. So they said, when you bring a development, you're going to designate a certain area of land to be used as the park. Well, then as these developments came in, we don't want all these parks. We'd rather have money. So then they went to an assessment, and now they're stepping up, which I didn't realize till tonight. Now they're stepping up the game. This this isn't a tax assessment that I think should just be willy-nilly just raised. You're right. This is one of the things that has bothered developers for a long time. All these hoops that you got to do, and with EPA and all these regulations and the stormwater, which all had to be dealt with because it wasn't done with before, they've all come forward. But now this is just, basically this is a tax. I don't care what you want to call it. This is a tax. And now you're going to implement and raise that up drastically. I would be much opposed to that.
Well, first of all, Stanton, do you have that ordinance in front of you, how it reads, the 5%?
I do.
Could
yeah.
you read that? Because it doesn't give the Park and Rec very clear definition on what the 5% actually is.
That's correct, and that was part of the conversation where the language of the code says that the person requesting annexation or master planning shall dedicate an area equal to 5% of the land annexed or master plan. So that's the alternative the mayor spoke about, where it could be either land or cash. But then the language goes on to say, and I think I've ripped it out here because I do have a proposed suggestion when the conversation wraps up, is that the language says currently, excuse me, the board may allow the owner to donate a sum in cash equal to 5% of the value of the property to be annexed or master planned, but in no event less than $100. And so that's the language right now that you're referring to, John. When the Park and Rec Board met last week, it was the 5%. There is an opportunity for the owner of property to appeal the determination of the 5%. But as it currently reads, the ordinance says the board may allow the owner to donate a sum in cash equal to 5%. And maybe this is out of order, Mayor, but I'm wondering if the council's in agreement, I could make this revision, and while the meeting was going on, I scribbled in my own hand a proposed revision to this, because many years ago, I think maybe it was you, Alderman Danforth, but the city council historically has ordinances where fees were set by ordinance, and anytime you wanted to change it, you had to come and amend the ordinance, as opposed to having a fee resolution that you folks, the entire council said, bring that to us annually. We might not change any of them, but at least do it by resolution so it gives us flexibility. So the proposed revision would be, and I remember asking if we could. Years ago, I remember asking, while we were doing this, shouldn't we include this park dedication as part of that annual fee resolution? I remember that conversation I had with Roger Adams and probably some other folks on the board. But the way the language currently reads, what I would suggest is the council consider revising it to say the board, and that means the Park and Rec Board, may recommend the owner donate a sum in cash as established by resolution of the city council, which is something I proposed years ago, and it would be a simple change, and that way, to the mayor's point, or to your point, it's not going to be a moving target. Every year you're going to get a chance to look at it. Is it a sum based on the total land area? How would you fix that? But I think if there's an annual fee resolution, like there are with so many other fees that the council imposes for building permits, sign permits, etc., that this is something you could look at annually, and if it needs to be changed, you can.
I don't disagree that it needs to be changed. It probably does. It kind of caught us off guard at the Park and Rec meeting, that this came before us less than a week before it's going to come to the council meeting for park dedication. The fee structure needs to be changed, and I'll agree with that. However, usually what takes place is when a developer on this has a piece of property that they want to give us, it's usually some undevelopable scrap of land that has a poor slope or has whatever wrong with it that they can't develop for anything else, and that's what the city ends up with as parkland. I think this process probably needs to take place way earlier in the process, when they come up to City Hall and they want to plat a piece of property, that's when the park or the park area needs to be selected. And we probably even need to go back farther than that to our comprehensive land use plan that we put together with First District. We need to select areas around the community where we put the parks, rather than every little piece of property we bring in, we think we need a piece of park property. So we got to probably get with First District, work that into the plan so we have these designated areas throughout the community as we continue to grow, and then we won't run into a lot of these issues with getting scraps or what's left.
I would agree with that, John, and I would agree to it almost entirely. The only reason that I think a lot of it comes back to us as unusable land for them is because we expect that that's going to be some type of a retention or a detention pond, and that's one of the uses that we've had all along for these, is that's where the water goes, so we can hold it back so it doesn't flood the neighbors. So I really agree. We need to look at this as more of a land management plan. Where do we want our parks established? Do we want all these little tiny parks that the Park and Rec is out there mowing and trying to get taken care of? And I think that would be a good thing.
How do we get this process started with First District to get this in place so we don't run into this problem?
I'm sorry. I think maybe what you do is the mayor, when he sits down with them to talk about their scope of their work for the comprehensive land use plan, that needs to be part of it. That First District, you assist the city in adopting the comprehensive land use plan. We want you to always make certain that part of that adoption process includes a description of where in other kinds of development occurs. First District comes up with where industrial dirt should be, where commercial land, residential. That's part of the comprehensive land use plan. They also need to include a component, if they're not, and a whole lot more detail of where does it make sense to have parks, so developers can plan accordingly.
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think originally this was so that we would assure ourselves when people did develop that there was usable property for parks. Okay, not necessarily that we needed them in that space every time somebody did a development. But I agree with what John's saying. I think that should be and definitely be part of the scope of work for now. And I think they just finished that, if I'm not mistaken. I think I saw Pat Shriver walk in. They just finished the comprehensive land use plan. So I think if we're going to do something now, we'd have to revisit that, which you can do. You can do that. So
I would disagree, though, that you have all these little parcels coming in as parks. Those parcels are retention, which are required, and the parks aren't accepting that as part of the 5%. They're accepting cash instead because they don't want them as a park. So I think you're mixing things up here. They're not; those retention ponds aren't getting counted as toward their park donation. They've got that they have to give up, which is part of it. Now they have to give up either a parcel or give up the cash, and now you're saying you're going to raise the cash sum. And I understand the concept of, okay, instead of you having a park, this isn't big enough. If everybody puts a piece into it, realistically what could happen is the next developer comes along, has a small parcel, and this is where the best part for a park is, then the city should take some of that money they assess from somebody else and buy some property for that then, because that's what I think should be done.
Bill, I think I agree with you. I think that if we do plan it, we got to pay. I think we're going to have to pay for it. I don't see how we could do this. Even if we do plan it, if we do plan with comprehensive land use plan and we set aside areas, developers still have the option to purchase that unless we do.
Yeah, instead of, because they're going to look at it and try to get the best buck out of the space that they got, and if the city thinks that is a better place for a park, then we should cough up for it. We're taxing them and taking the money for that in the first place.
Okay, then question quick, back to the mayor's point. Where do we stand with this particular resolution then, development agreement? Is that $50,000 assessment part of this right now, as it stands?
Okay, we just worked at this just as this meeting was kind of getting started. So we've actually revised the land, or the portion of the development agreement that puts that in your hands right now. So the council can determine what they want for park dedication.
Right. So I think what's in front of the council on this particular development agreement is we need to really amend our motion on it. Have I got a motion on the floor? No? I would like the motion to read approval, but change the park dedication to the notwithstanding the provisions of 140120 of the revised ordinance of the City of Watertown, the City Council will determine now and in what manner the developer will be made to satisfy the park dedication requirement. What I am proposing to you is you either take the option of $10,000 or $1,000 per acre on this, is what they have done in the past, or take the property that they have dedicated for the land, which would go into the third phase of this particular project on Eastwoods. So that's what I'm asking you guys to do.
Mayor, we don't know what that property is now, right now, do we?
Absolutely. It's right
We
to-
don't know that.
Right, do you have a picture of that?
we
It
can
was
show
a
you-
row
we
of
can show
lots
you
that
that.
had a steep slope to it.
I don't have that picture available,
You
but
can
it
put a
is in.
GIS up though. Yep.
It takes a while to load, but anyway, it's in phase 2. It's about a block further east of 27th Street here.
I think from what we said, I don't think we want to decide at this point in time what land. I think we should just deal with the dollar part of it and address this land thing at a later
I
date.
really think you should take the dollars so we can get this project moving along. I tell you what, they started this project in February of this year, and it has gone just every step that they've taken, they've had a door closed on them, and this is the 17th edition of the same thing, and they've done each and every one identical, and they've done it the way that they should have done. There's been nothing cut back on it. I think you guys need to agree to take the $10,000 and put that into the park fund, and we really should take these dollars. I agree, John. Put them in a fund that can be used to buy a larger piece of ground for a park. But I really think that you need to approve this agreement tonight by taking the cash and let these folks get moving on so they can get their roads starting to cut them in this next week.
So we currently don't have a motion on this yet?
So I am
Since
going
it's
to
a
look
little
for-
more complicated, can I just make the motion that we approve the development agreement with the stipulation that the $10,000 is the park assessment?
Yes, that's a motion.
You were trying to teach him how to get that all spit out.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry.
I have a motion by Bill and a second by Beth. Now, is there any more discussion on that?
What's the land area that they are proposing for the park area?
It's 2.2 acres.
Okay, it's 2.2 acres. And has the Park and Rec looked at that site and said, is it a suitable site?
Yes, we had discussion on it and determined that those 3 lots, because there's a park in that vicinity up there already. And I think there's only, it's about 3-4 blocks away?
4 blocks.
4 blocks away, there's already a park there. So we determined that having one that close, and so that's why we decided it'd be better to take the cash so that we could either purchase land, put it in a fund, put a park where it's desirable, rather than just take what they were giving us. Because the property that was given us has a pretty extreme slope to it. So it wasn't really a developable area for lots. So we determined that taking the cash would be the better way out.
Okay, any other questions on that?
I do have one, Mayor. You had just mentioned that there were a lot of hurdles that they had to cross in order to get this done.
Yes.
That concerns me, and I think if that shouldn't be happening.
It shouldn't
And I'd
happen.
like to be able to address what those hurdles were and see how we can help these.
If I may, I will speak to that right now. What we've done, Shane and I have had numerous discussions on how this actually came across, and it's happening to a number of developments. What the city has done as an engineering side, we actually took the conceptual plan, made the engineers draw it up to almost a phase 3 on the conceptual plan. So we knew exactly where the water flows. They have put countless hours of engineering into that. So what we're proposing, rather than come to the Planning Commission and have it stop there with a resolution, then the folks have to come back and put it in the paper again, wait another entire month, and again run up against the same hurdles with more resolutions and more worries. That then has to go through another level of advertising and taking to the Planning Commission. So what we're proposing is that instead of having a resolution, When they come to the Planning Commission, which is going to be held now twice a month, which will help speed the process, they are then put as a table. We will table that item so that they can address it again on the next meeting without going through the entire process of advertising and doing that. I think it's much simpler. Shane, I appreciate the work that you've done on that, and it'll go much, much smoother, and it'll work substantially better than what we're doing right now. Because I think what we have to realize, we're up here at City Hall, time seems to slip by us, and we don't understand that time element. But when you've only got 3 or 4 months of time to build roads and to put that infrastructure in, you can't be messing around every time, coming up and having to advertise, wait 2 weeks, get on the agenda that next month, and then something's wrong, or you miss that exact time frame to get on the agenda. It just turns into weeks and weeks and months and months. So we're addressing it, Bruce, and I think it's coming full circle, and it's going to be much better for the developers. We've had that conversation with them. They're thrilled with the ideas that Shane has brought forward for us. So I'm pretty excited about that. Any other questions? Hopefully I answered it for you, Bruce.
I want to just make one comment, because I do want the council to know that as the engineering, or as the city engineer and representing my staff and being the planning official, I do embrace this clarity, especially on this park dedication issue, because if it goes the way the discussion is happening, it really simplifies how we approach these development agreements. It's going to be a really cut and dried calculation. It will set that at a very simple process for us. We won't have to go to the park board every time we have a development come forward, I think. And then also, it's very, very important that we plan the use of our property, or the areas around the city that are going to get annexed in, and plan your parks accordingly.
I would agree, because you're looking north of 18th Avenue. I truly feel above the new school and the community center, you're going to see development up there. You're going to see that brought into the city. You're going to see east of 15th Street, the same thing. It's just going to happen. And I think the Park and Rec really wants this clarity also. Any other questions? I do have a motion and a second on the floor. This time I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Tony. Sorry to steal that from you for a minute, but I knew there was going to be talk.
Consideration of software maintenance agreement renewals for the police department and E911 center.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Scott McMahon, Captain Sports Services with the Watertown Police Department. Tonight, we're coming before you to ask for permission to enter into a contractual agreement with Zerker Technologies out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Zerker Technologies is a public safety software company that provides us the software to basically conduct day-to-day business at the Watertown Police Department, to include 911, mobile out in the vehicles, records management, evidence, and so forth. When we entered into this agreement in 2012, we were joined by the Cottington County Sheriff's Department, and that 3-year agreement with the two agencies is due beginning in 2016.
Can we have a motion and a second for discussion?
Motion.
Motion by Danforth.
Second. Second.
Second by Tupper.
Any questions?
Scott, a couple of contractual questions here.
Sure.
There were a few conditions in there where it was a 30-day notice to us. If the city did something that they deemed improper, they could give us a 30-day notice and knock us out of the contract. Just a suggestion, is 30 days enough time? Did you guys consider that?
We did consider it. We did review the contract, as well as the city attorney also reviewed the contract. The last 3 years has gone very well with Zerker Technologies, and we don't foresee that there will be any future problems. The company is a growing company. It just merged with another software company called TriTech, which is a rather large company. And we feel that Zerker Technology has been there for us during our business needs, and we don't anticipate any problem with that. We also know that it's very labor intensive to switch from one software company to another. It's not something that would happen in 30 days, I guess, for that fact. It would take a fair amount of time to do that. So, I think we're comfortable with the contract as it is.
A couple of the points on that. There's a 180-day notice also on renewals, I believe. What happens after year 5? I don't think it was identified. What happens after year 5?
I don't recall for sure if I guess what I would say, Don, is if it's similar to today's contract, at the end of year 5, we'd have the option of renewing or not renewing. Like I said, at this point in time, we're looking to renew or basically establish a new contract for the next 5 years. We do feel that it's beneficial to do a 5-year contract versus a 3-year, just because of the price that's being offered, which is about a 5% increase year after year. Michael Zerker, the CEO of Zerker Technology, told us back in 2012 that we could always anticipate about a 5% a year increase in price, and he's held true to that figure. Where some of the other software companies, you don't know if it's 5%, 20%, 30%. So,
Scott, you've answered.
Can I just do 2 more quick ones? Just a couple more contractual things. We've had rat holes, rabbit holes. I guess my vermin of choice is a badger hole. 2 other just quick items, and this is maybe late in the game if you guys have negotiated that contract, but the notice section does require written notice. That you might want to consider an electronic version of notice. And lastly, I didn't say anything about if they go bankrupt. What happens? Do we get the source code? What happens if they go under? And I understand in a bankruptcy court here you're going to have access to that because of the emergency nature of it, but did you consider what would happen if they went away or they had financial trouble?
Yeah, we did have that in today's contract. That was in there. I got to actually look through this, Don, to find the points that you're referring to. But I wanted to say that there was something in here related to financial situations, whether that would be with the city of Watertown not being able to afford those annual payments, or Zerker Technology or some other company affiliated with it filing bankruptcy or some action like that. I wanted to say that it was in here and covered, but
I saw it if we were bankrupt. I didn't see if it happened to them.
Okay.
Scott, you've answered a couple questions that I had, but I'm assuming this is something that does not need to go out for bids. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a professional service, so we don't have to bid it.
3 years ago, I'm assuming we did some comparison shopping on this. Oh, we did. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
3 years ago we were faced with prices that were more expensive at the time than what Zerker Technology was, and we were also having some problems with the software meeting our needs. So that caused us to search for other software companies and do some research. But like I said, changing software is a major task to do that because of all the information that's in there. We'd have to go through a data conversion, which would be rather expensive, and it would be very cumbersome.
So I'm coming in new to this. It sounds like this group has done its due diligence in the past. It's not like you complete the service. I guess our firm has bid out a lot of governmental and nonprofit work over the years, and I guess that 5% every year, a flat increase, a little bit disappointing as far as I'm concerned.
It would be nice to see some sort of justification for those price increases if we could do that. But I will tell you, Glenn, just for your benefit, we interviewed the folks that represented the different organizations that were that applied to do this for us and supply the software. And it was a lengthy process, and there were a lot of questions asked, and it was unanimous that we agreed to work with these folks with Zerker.
We were looking at considerably less cost, but with the software we're at, it isn't like somebody else can support it. Part of the support fees, I assume, include upgrades to software and other things that get integrated that just become part of the. It isn't just that they're sitting there. If you got a call and something wrong with data, they're also doing upgrades, and they are don't they back up
Well, they don't necess-
Even the hardware, they've got it so it'll be remotely accessed, and they know if a piece of hardware is going bad, then they're aware of that
Yes.
before it even happens, or they've got redundancy so they can take care of that.
And like you said, Councilman Riefenberger, it's not a product that sits stale. You buy it today and it sits there for 3 years. It's the same product. It's an ongoing revision, sometimes month after month. That there's new revisions that they are putting out to the agencies that are using their software. So there's continuous growth in their product, and I would imagine that they have to recover some of that growth through maintenance and increases in maintenance.
Scott, is the county on board with this too? I mean, as far as this?
I have not been in conversations with Sheriff Wishart on it, but I would assume that he would, again, just because of the amount of labor that goes into switching from one software company to another. For example, with the sheriff, he has jail and he has his civil packages that he uses through Zerker. If he were to change companies, all that photos of the booking photos, all the information related to charges, all that would have to be go through a data conversion process to a new company. And I mean, like I said, it literally would take 6 months to change everything over.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there a little, they didn't quite want to go with the same thing the city was going with when we originally went to Zerker?
Well, at the time, I think there was there was questions asked from both sides as far as whether it was the right move to move away from the vendor that we had at that time and go with a new vendor, or try and work with that current vendor at the time to try and resolve the issues and problems that we were having. And I think after many, many meetings, much discussion, it was decided both by the sheriff as well as the chief of police and councilmen and commissioners that the best move at the time was to go with Zerker Technologies.
Well, Scott, I had sent you an email, and I thank you for getting me
Sure.
the information on the previous contract. But it seems really odd from my perspective. I'm with Glenn. It seems really odd that we can look out 5 years and say they're just going to have a price increase of 5% every year. I understand. We talked about their support that they do and the updates we get. That's all
Sure.
in the fee we pay. And the increase, I'm assuming, is to cover their inflation, and to plan on a 5% annual inflation rate seems very odd to me and seems very high.
Although I want to stress that those of you that were on the council, and I think Mike, you were on there, we were very well aware that it was going to be a 5% increase every year, because one of the things that Scott is mentioning, we were getting increases of 20% and 30%, and they were not out of line for that software. That's one of the reasons why I went with Zerker, because we could actually budget that. We knew what our costs were going to be for the software. So 5 may seem strange that it's hooked up every year, but with this particular one, it cost us $1 million to put the information in, and almost the same dollar amount for the county. So it's not something that we need to take lightly. But
I think
we were very aware.
No, I think one of the things that's maybe missed there, Mike, in the concept of that, it's not like it's just a fixed, I've got this one thing and it's static and it's a 5% rates on that. This product, because of constant development on it, it's growing, so that's expanding, so a larger expansion in the cost of supporting that as this thing grows into a bigger, because one of the problems you had with the original ones, you had all these different parts and pieces that didn't integrate with Hoot, and you fought with that, and you couldn't get data to transfer back and forth. Well, as they see these issues other places, they have to integrate and upgrade and get those things done. So it's not like it's the same today as it was tomorrow. Part of that growth is within the actual product, isn't it?
Well, that's true, Bill. Public safety software it's designed in such a manner, in my belief anyway, that they break their product up into components. If you want CAD, or if you want mobile, or if you want records, or you want evidence, you can buy software in those different components. For an agency our size, we need all of those components to conduct business. One thing that we didn't talk about is our initial investment into the software. Our initial investment was fairly large. It was almost $500,000 to cover that initial purchase of the software, and then there was annual maintenance agreements every year after that. Now we're just talking, we use the software. So from this point forward, we're not having to make that initial purchase again. We're just having to continue to pay maintenance, which is far cheaper than if we were to look at a new company and have to pay that upfront cost of switching everything over and buying new software.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I will look for council action. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. I think at this time, these guys have done an outstanding job for us, these scouts. I know they got school in the morning. We don't want to hold you up. And it is 8:30. I think at this time, if you guys want to be excused, you sure can. We've got some other things going on, and I absolutely appreciate everything you've done. And Citizens Day is wonderful. One of these days, well, not so far from now, we're going to see you sitting there in Scott's chair and my chair and your guys' chair and finance, engineers. It's pretty cool. Thanks for coming, you guys. We do appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
Hey, Bruce, go grab me a Diet Coke, will you? Okay. All right, I'm going to move on, guys. Number 15, consideration of bids for the police department patrol cars. Bid tab was currently handed out. Scott, if you want to take care of this for me.
Yes, you can have a car. No, I'm just.
Okay, on October 10th and 17th, we advertised for patrol vehicles, for bids for a patrol vehicle, and we had that bid opening on October 30th here at City Hall. We did receive one bid for the patrol vehicle, and I can go through those once we get to discussion point.
Okay, what I'll do is I will look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Mike, second by Beth. Any questions you have for Scott?
Mayor, I will recuse myself from this discussion and vote. Conflict of interest.
Explain to us whose car this is and what the deal is.
Sure. We currently have a K-9 vehicle that was purchased by the Attorney General's office, or we received funding to purchase this. It's a 2008 Crown Victoria, and it has over 100,000 miles on it, and we're starting to see some repairs that need to be done on it. So we've been in contact with the Attorney General's office again, and we were notified recently that we've been recipient of a $30,000 grant funded by the Attorney General's office, and our intent is to purchase a new vehicle with that $30,000 so that we can have a good vehicle for our canine officer.
Looks
Any
like you spent
questions?
most of it then. Scott, looks like you pretty well spent most of it then, right?
Pretty much. We did get a bid for the police utility vehicle. The canine officer specifically wanted an SUV type vehicle, and we did get one bid from Watertown Ford for a Police Explorer vehicle. That bid came in at $28,790. There were some options that we needed to have with this because of the fact that it is a canine vehicle. We wanted to make sure that it had air conditioning to the rear where the canine will be transported during the daytime hours. So that was an addition, and then also remote start and remote locks so that if the car needed to be hooked to like the temperature sensor in the vehicle so that it would start the car and run the air conditioner, so there's no chances of having a problem that would cause the dog to suffer heat extreme or something like that, extreme heat. But sometimes you see those types of articles in the paper, and we needed these extra options to avoid having that happen here.
What happens to the old one?
The old car?
Yeah.
That, like I said, was a purchase through Attorney General funds, so that will go back to the Attorney General's office unless they tell us to do something differently. But at this point in time, the plan is that vehicle go back to the South Dakota Attorney General's office.
Scott, how was the spec written? I mean, are we writing a spec in this particular case? Why would we get one bid? Is it written in such a manner that that's really all we're going to get, or?
No, I think there certainly could have been room for other types of vehicles. I think the bid specs that we put together were, very near to what the state specs are. So, I suppose that somebody could have bid a Dodge Durango or some type of a Chevy vehicle. We did, request an all-wheel drive and the engine size and so forth. I think there's other models that could have fit that. I don't think it's specific to a Ford Explorer.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Number 16, authorization for the mayor to sign a professional service agreement with H.R. Green for the wastewater ultraviolet disinfection improvements project in the amount of $48,000. Shane, if you want to help us out.
Yeah, Howard R. Green is a consulting engineering firm that was hired to complete the plans and specifications for the wastewater treatment facility with their ultraviolet disinfection improvements project. Previously, the council has approved and awarded UV equipment in the amount of $334,000. We also have had a letting and award of the demo and installation of that equipment in the amount of $236,180. So what's before you now is to extend the contract with the consulting engineer beyond those services into the construction phase. Those would include project management, shop drawing review, interpreting the specs, and doing some on-site inspections, all the way through final completion and punch list, and they would provide engineering record drawings. So the schedule of fees is not to exceed $48,000 for those services.
Okay, so at this time, I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion.
Second.
Motion by Beth, second by Don. Any questions for Shane? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion, or I'm sorry, council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 17, authorization for mayor to sign a supplemental letter agreement for additional services with SEH Inc. for Roby Creek FIS map update in the amount of $4,600. Shane, if you want to take this one.
Yeah, their SEH was our consulting engineer working on that project for us to review and enhance or revise the floodplain maps for the Roby Creek project. We are at task 7, which is the Lomar closeout services phase. Basically, this is going to allow them to assist us with our public meetings that we need to have in the near future to present that information to the public and complete that process so that everybody knows. And we want to certainly lean on their knowledge and expertise through that public hearing process. So this would extend their contract in the amount of $4,600.
Okay, so at this time, I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Randy. Any questions for Shane on this? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 18, consideration of joint funding agreement with the United States Geological Survey, USGS, for operation and maintenance of the Upper Big Sioux River Flood Forecasting System for 2016. Again, Shane.
Yeah, this is an annual agreement that comes before the council each year at about this time, I would assume. The city's share of the maintenance agreement for the flood gauging stations is $21,905. It is within our budgeted amount that we had for this coming 2016 budget year. So with that, I guess I would entertain any questions or recommend approval.
Okay, I think what I'll do then, Shane, is I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Glenn, second by Bruce. Any questions that you have for Shane on this?
The question, is the county and the Lake and Piscataway Project District on board with their portion as well?
I'm assuming so. I can't speak for their boards.
I'm sure they are. This is something that we've done over and over and over. This actually takes the level of the river, knows where the flooding comes from, where we're standing, in in the springs.
How does these costs compare? I mean, I know it says covered in the budget. How does it compare? Is it pretty consistent?
It's pretty consistent.
I mean, I know we've had it every year. I just don't remember what it showed previously.
Is the assumption, if we are approving this, is the assumption that the other parties are willing? Is that what?
I would assume. Yeah, I don't think there'll be any question that they won't be on board. Okay, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 19, consideration of change order number 3 to the contract with Gray Construction for the wastewater alkalinity feed addition project, increasing the contract amount $4,243. Shane?
Okay. This project you've seen, this is the third time you've seen a change order regarding the same area of the project. This is a portion of the project where they had to move some sludge lines to do these alkalinity improvements. While they were doing that, they found out that they had some conflicts, so they rerouted those pipes. Then they found some debris that was within the excavation area. This final change order then pays for the material that it took to replace the debris that was excavated and removed from the project. So this amount is $4,243. The staff recommends payment as funds are available in the sewer enterprise cash reserves and will certainly pay for this additional cost.
Okay, so at this time I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Bruce, second by Bill. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. I was wondering why, Pat, you were sleeping back there. You've been waiting for this last one. Number 20, approval of employee group health insurance plan renewal for 2016. Shelley, you're up.
I'll go fast. Yeah. Is that a motion? As the mayor said, we did get the renewals for 2016 from Wellmark. As you can see on the information provided to you, the overall 2.92% increase in the premiums is well below the national average. It is well within the 2016 budget. What I am asking for is a motion to renew the 2016 health insurance benefits with Wellmark with the renewal rates as shown above.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll ask for that.
Can I also, in the same motion, if you would approve the finance office to transfer any excess health insurance funds to the restricted cash account for the health insurance deductible reimbursement program as you have in the 2 previous years?
Okay, now I'll look for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Motion by Randy, second by Beth. In the motion that you wrote there, Shelley,
Who seconded?
that was Beth.
So how much money are we transferring, and how big is that fund growing to?
We don't know how much excess. That's something that we're negotiating at this time, and we have not come up with an agreement with all 3 of the unions on the employee-employer portion. Hopefully within the next week before open enrollment starts, we'll have that, and then I can give you a better understanding of how much that'll be. Right now, we have about $115,000 in there. Through the 3rd quarter of 2015. We have 1 quarter left of 2015, and we're anticipating about $10,000. So
I
it'll
know
be
what I
105.
haven't been party to any of the negotiations. I know what the intention of that fund was so you could use it to keep the deductible from growing, but are we going to work ourselves in a position where we're going to say that money's there and we want something additional that it gets used for?
Absolutely not. I think that was put into a restricted account for the insurance, so that is restricted, and we would not be able to use that for anything else.
But we may have to, we couldn't end up negotiating paying a bigger percentage than we currently
Well,
do?
I think during the negotiations, they of course are always asking for more and more and more, but I think we're very comfortable with the insurance plan that we currently have.
I think it's more than fair, obviously, but that's...
Yeah.
And that'll be something, if we would ever increase those premiums, that has to come before the council and get approved, and then how all that works out would have to be approved as well. So, I mean,
Right.
it's not like it would happen without any council weighing in
And
at
the
all.
insurance group would get together and take a look at
Correct.
it if they want to bump the
Yep.
anything around on that. So
Yep.
pretty much leaving as is. So we do have a motion and a second already on the floor. Any other questions for Shelley on this?
What was the percentage increase this past year, Shelley? You know right offhand? Just
I mean, for 2015,
Yeah.
it was 6%. Yeah, about 6. And I believe it was right at
Okay.
that 8% the year before.
We haven't, there's no change this time in deductibles, but I think some of those rates, to get them down to that, was deductibles had to be raised up too.
Yeah, I think you actually probably budgeted more than 2.92%, but it was a real thrill to get that. Yes. And, we didn't have the big claims that we had last year in our plan. So I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 21, is there any old business that we need to discuss? Hearing none, is there any new business that we need to discuss?
I've got one comment to make, Mayor. Last Tuesday night, several of us were at the public safety gathering at the Elks. I forget exactly what it's called. I just want to thank and recognize Margaret Snyder was named the employee or the volunteer of the year for her work with the police department. So I'd like to recognize Margaret.
And she also makes fantastic cookies, and I got on her mailing list through Connie Cutler, so when she takes them over to the police station, I'll get that note and I'll send it to you guys. I would like to recognize Spencer Tenaik. Did I say that pretty close? All right. Well, Spencer is our new department head with the IT department, and he comes from the computer field down here just south of town.
Connecting Point.
Connecting Point.
Yep.
Thank you. It's getting late. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Spencer. Don't go into too much detail. We don't want that much time.
I was a Cub Scout. No, I'm originally born in Omaha, but grew up in Lake Preston, and moved up here about 8 years ago, and started working at Connecting Point, around 5.5 years ago, and I guess there's not much else to say. Been working myself up, with the technical stuff for quite a while, and I guess I don't know what
Yeah,
else
well,
to
we're
say.
excited to have you on board. This is Spencer's first day today.
It's a long one.
Yeah, long day. And
I think I'll come back.
okay, we're planning on putting up another office upstairs for Spencer, so he can have that. And at that particular time, if we can get Pete over here, so we can get the whole IT department together and working as a team, it'll be really good.
I think Ray's
With
got room in there.
help.
He can just push some stuff aside and fit him in there, don't you think?
Yeah, he's already done that a little bit.
We
yeah.
did good. We did
Yeah.
that today. I am excited about getting to gel the group together. I think we had some good conversations today, and it's exciting. You know,
I will tell you,
get a department going here.
I had to stop the library because Mike asked for you to come over there. He said he's got a room for him, didn't he? I'm not kidding. I said, nope, not going to be going there. So welcome aboard, Spencer. We appreciate you being here and wish you many, many years of good luck here at the city.
All right, thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Mayor, I got an item. Quick.
Oh,
Two
okay.
items. I'm going to make it quick.
All right.
If you haven't had a chance to drive out by the new ball diamonds, do that. They're moving a lot of dirt out there. I think they're going to be done with earth moving in how many days?
You know, they had 21 days is what they had planned on. I think it's probably about another 10, 12 days, and they should have that whipped out.
Sounds about right. We'll have an update report tomorrow at noon.
Yep. So, and the other, can we get an update on the new community center? Progress on that? I haven't really heard a lot.
You know, it's going extremely well. They've got the sidewalls up on the short walls are going up. They have the taller walls that are over by the pool are going in extremely strong. They will actually, once they get this thing enclosed and the weather has held up really nice for them, they'll start digging the pool probably in March, April, so they can start working on that. Everything is really on schedule. It's just amazing when you go up there, all the guys working and moving around. Does anybody have anything they want to add to it? Because it's incredible, and I would encourage all of you on the council to go up there, visit with Jason, and get a helmet on and have him take you for a little tour. Anything else? I did get some pictures of the softball diamond. I was planning on giving them to Ray and have them put up there, but Troy Van Duzen from the police department has a drone. He took some pictures of it for me, and then also Greg Hansen has a drone. He went up there and took some pictures for me, so I got all kinds of pictures and videos that'll be coming, and I'll probably post those on our website. You can take a look at the videos up there. No, we aren't going that high. Just so you. Yeah. Sure. It's not magic.
It's magic. It is magic.
I will tell you that on the news on the airport, we're expecting very good things. That time frame will be stopped here shortly. We should know there's at least 3 to 4 airlines that are looking at Watertown, and we've been in great conversation with them, anywhere from little rocket ships that go 400 and some miles an hour to 50-seat aircraft that are in that 380 miles an hour, and they're both pretty cool. Yeah. Louis Air Service, he said. Any liaison member reports? I'm looking at you, Randy. Nothing?
Nothing this week.
Okay. Any need to go into executive session? I don't have any tonight. I would entertain a motion, a second to adjourn. Okay, Randy and Glenn, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.